Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pixelated Echoes. We're so close to episode 20 of season 1. We're going to have a great show today. We'll be going over what's been happening in the gaming sphere, including Black Myth Wukong, Sony's protection in the media, and more. But as always, we're going to kind of start with what we've been up to this week. I've been playing a ton of Mafia. I beat the first Mafia game, and now I'm on the second one. The first one was good. I remember I mentioned it on this show. Maybe it was FSP. My light's freaking out. I'll fix it in a second. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I finished the first one, and what I liked about the first one, it had like this family feel, like Billy, Bobby, and don't come here, give you a hug to your brother, like that kind of mafia vibe. Like whenever I think of the mob and mafia, whatever, I think of
Yeah.
like basically that game. Two is a little different.
Mhm.
I'm pretty far into. I'm on this section where you're in the prison. I won't spoil too much there if you guys are interested, but I'm in a prison, and the story so far is not like family focused. It's more so about like you climbing up the ranks slowly, it seems like. So
Mhm.
in terms of feel, it does feel a little different. But yeah, I'm enjoying Mafia 2, because also the world in Mafia 2 is a lot more dense. There's more things to do in the world. Like you can go shopping, you can steal a car, and the car system is different too. Because like
Mhm.
if you steal a car, someone can put the license plate down. And so you're driving throughout the city, and then your license plate is tagged, cops can like actually fine you and things like that. And also like with that game, I've never seen it where well that was a system. I've never seen that system, but I also never
Mhm.
seen where actually got to follow the traffic laws. If you speed, cops can actually like pull you over for speeding.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, that's usually not a thing in the game. So it has a like a limiter for your car for how fast you can drive, and
Mhm.
you can turn it on and off if you want to drive really fast and turn it off. I usually turn it on in the city and then turn it off when I'm like on the outskirts where there's not a lot of cops. So pretty cool,
Yeah.
pretty fun. I don't know many games that have that mechanic, but everybody who's gonna drop on in, hello. So yeah, that's basically what I've been up to. I've been playing that game. So let's get to my guests, or actually my co-hosts. Guests possibly coming. Mav might be dropping in middle of the show. We'll see. He's
Mhm.
doing some stuff right now. But let's get to my co-host, the horror watching, podcast marathon, and Felix, the cat purring, race car driving, the one, the only, Fuzzy Belvedere. How you doing today, man? And what you been playing this week?
Oh, doing great. Glad to be here with you, man. As far as what I've been playing, it's been a variety of stuff. I'm trying to finish up Atomic Heart before it leaves Game Pass. I don't know why I put it off for so long. I know some people like the game, some were like, it's whatever, but it's interesting enough to kind of like rush through it to some extent, fighting robots with weird mustaches and things like that. But gonna power through that one before it leaves Game Pass. Still playing my usual stuff. Have fallen back into Diablo. Like season 4 was great. Season 5 continues that same less stressful grind or less time consuming grind to get to level 100. Like it's I won't say it's easy, but it's definitely less of a chore than what it's been since the launch and stuff like that. So they're definitely onto something as far as making the player feel good with the gear that they can acquire. And before you even do the min max stuff, you can kind of set a few things or mix around with things and get a feel for what possibilities you can build once you get to like level 100. Still playing for well, I even got the shirt on today. Forza Horizon 5 and everything, and still working on getting all the cars. Like I think 3 away from 800 unique cars, which you get like a little badge for that. But I have well over 800. It's just that some are duplicates and things like that. But trying to make sure I get as many of the cars without buying the car packs, which outside the car pack that you get if you buy like the DLC and stuff like that, there's been like I think 4 or 5 additional car packs. One of them being the one with Knight Rider and the Back to the Future cars and the Jurassic Park Jeep. I want to wait until they do a bundle sale to kind of get all of those in one lump sum for like a reasonable amount. The car packs aren't bad price to begin with. They're like $5 or $6 for like anywhere from 5 to 9 cars depending. But me trying to save money, I'm gonna wait until they probably have like a holiday sale and you can get all the car packs for like under $20 or something like that. But still playing GT7 on my PS5, and that's pretty much all that I play on my PS5. But just bouncing from my Steam Deck to my PC to my Xbox, which that's the great thing about the platform. Just being able to play anywhere on the go or anywhere in the house kind of thing. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. No movies or big time movies or anything like that as of more recent, but I think the last couple of movies I saw was obviously Wolverine or Deadpool versus Wolverine and Aliens Romulus, which I really enjoyed. Actually, both movies, but Alien Romulus was up there on the list, and had a little calling to Prometheus or the Return to the Covenant Alien movie as well.
Mhm.
It's somewhere between Aliens 1 and 2, so between Alien and Aliens, that's where that one kind of falls, and it was pretty good. If you're an Aliens fan, it was great. If you're Aliens versus Predator or more of a Predators fan, it doesn't. There are some ties, but nothing really calling out to Predator in this one. But the director said they would like to revisit that as far as doing a future Aliens and versus Predator kind of movie. So who knows? That might be in the near future as well.
Yeah, I had a chance to see it as
Mhm.
well, and a lot of I didn't know this was a thing. Like, I didn't know that people didn't like Prometheus. I did
Really?
not know that was a thing. Yeah. It was like also background's freaking out now. But yeah, like I didn't know that people didn't like it. I love the first Prometheus movie, or just Prometheus in general.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good, and then they did tie it here. They basically, well, I won't spoil what's in there, but there is some Prometheus ties going on,
Yeah.
with the thing, which is cool. Let me see what's going on. There you go. I fixed some things going on. Let me fix this. Bada bing, doing this live. Bam. Yeah, I don't know what the heck. That just everything just went black for no reason. Um, but yeah, I love Prometheus and Wolverine and Deadpool. If you guys haven't seen that movie, good time. Surprisingly, I have a lot of people who haven't seen that yet, so definitely go
Yeah.
check that out. If you haven't already. So, let's see. Things are just my computer's just freaking out right now. Before we started this, my OBS was freaking out too. So
Mhm.
this just might be one of those shows, but that's okay. We'll work through it. So let's first off, everybody in chat, hello. You got Poison Maniac, Bold Alpha Wolf, Jason Max, Steph Leopard. Shout out to you guys for coming on by. Hello, Calorie. Appreciate you for dropping on by. We had who someone said something. Yeah, Bold Alpha Wolf said like over 800. That's when you were probably talking about the cars. It's just yeah,
Mhm.
over 800. It's insane.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, let's get into our first time. Let's see. Hopefully he doesn't freak out here. Boop, 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 boop. Let's get some things going on. I'll keep it on this screen till things are okay. So the first topic of the day is game performance. So we kind of want to talk about this a little bit. We kind of debated on what we could chat about.
Mhm.
I think what's kind of heavy on the mind this week is the importance of game performance and kind of misinformation on about how things work.
Yeah.
So a common thread of what I've been seeing for Black Myth Wukong, for example, is Sony fans saying it not being available on Xbox is the result of the Series S. It's always the Series S's fault for everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's never the developer is developing the game. The Series S is a potato, therefore making the console requirement is to the detriment of the game. I do, while I disagree with that, and I'll state why in a second. I
Mhm.
do want to point out that Xbox does need to do a better job at optimizing 30 FPS games and stop giving reasons like, oh, we're 30 FPS is our vision, and like, oh, we thought we built the game for 30 FPS and we felt it was the best move, and just statements like that. Like you can't realistically say that with a game like Avowed when every single trailer you've shown is 60 frames per second, right?
Yeah.
Like if that was truly, oh, we were building our game for 30 FPS, every trailer you would have shown would have been 30 FPS.
Right.
Right? So just saying, I don't disagree there that Xbox, that's something they need to work on. PlayStation has done a pretty good job at optimizing a lot of their games. That's something I do give them credit for.
Yeah.
Not all the time. Spider-Man 2 was one of the buggiest games I've played, but it still gave you a lot of options. Like it gave you
Yeah.
ray tracing, things like that. So I would really like for Xbox to up that standard for their games just across the board. Me personally, having Xbox just really just hone in on that being a standard going forward. So I do want to bring up the two. With that being said, that's like the baseline of what I think
Mhm.
about Xbox. I do want to bring up like two sort of major factors on why I think it's not true that Series S is a potato and it needs to leave. See some peeps on chat saying potatoes. Um, yeah, so two kind of reasons or two kind of major factors on why I think it's not true. One is mentioning the Series S being a problem as a developer kind of indicates that you're only building for one spec. Like
Mhm.
you're just consoles. And if you're building for PC, then you should just throw out that argument out the window. Because on PC, you're building for hundreds of different video cards, different specs. You're in the minimum spec, which I'll get to in a second, is usually low, pretty low.
Mhm.
But just making sure it works on a variety of video cards and all this different stuff. So when you're building a game and it goes to PC, most likely you're not just building for one console. You're building for a variety of things. And consoles are as close to PCs as possible, right? So that's my first
Yeah.
sort of factor. The second factor I want to bring to the conversation is if your game's minimum specs are below the Series S, like Baldur's Gate 3,
Mhm.
that means it's not due to the specs of said machine. It's really like targeting. Targeting is the major problem, in my opinion, for a variety of games coming out. Like you build the game at these insanely high specs and rely on modern technology to optimize the game for you, which will always lead to performance disparities on top of that. Like, and 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 with that, there's also market preferability.
Mhm.
Like developers just prioritize the PlayStation version of a game, which leads to the Xbox version of a game being a port for most of the time, being a port of the PlayStation version. Which means all the optimization features that Xbox kept touting in the beginning, all the little cool things that you see in those trailers when you have like Jason Ronald and people going into it. Yeah, that's not being used. So even if Xbox is the more powerful platform on paper,
Mhm.
Third party wise, you'll never see it fully utilized unless the developer really uses those features from the get go. Um, Now I'll close here because I do want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
PlayStation has a similar problem with that, like where they put all this power into the SSD and developers can't utilize that fully. Because if
Mhm.
you're building your game to work on other consoles and PC platforms, you're not really building the game experience to work with that SSD. So the SSD that Sony spent so much money on and like, oh, the SSD is going to make the experience, it's pretty much useless to 90% of developers. It's basically akin to the Series X SSD, despite them putting so much money and power into the SSD.
Yeah.
Kind of concluding, Sony has and will always have the edge with third party development, in my opinion, due to their marketing position.
Mhm.
It feels like a hindrance for developers to want to do a proper Xbox port. It gets less attention because you're making it viable on a console like the Series S. But to me, that just leads to overall better performance for all consoles when you basically target that. We've seen that a couple times. Because when you target in development, it's like a game. You had games like Halo 4 run
Mhm.
on an Xbox 360. Like, just go back, look at that game, and if you were to release that nowadays, they'd be like, oh, that's not going to run on the Series S, right? But that game is butter. It worked on some ancient hardware because that's what they targeted at the time.
Yeah.
And developers now, they have this problem that you have all this room in memory now, all this room in graphics. Oh, look at all this new space I have now with the Series X and S. And I feel like it's leading to is just developers being like, oh, well, I got all this power now. Yeah, we basically gonna use that up pretty quick. So you would think when you see like Starfield running on the Series S, you got like Hogwarts, Forza
Mhm.
Horizon running on the Series S. You have more Series S games running at 120 frames than the PS5. That people will stop with the potato. It's a potato. It won't work. So yeah, I just want to bring you into it. Those are my
Yeah.
thoughts. It kind of goes
Mhm.
into different tech conversations, but what are your thoughts? Like, kind of bringing Black Myth into it,
Mhm.
recent games. What's kind of your thoughts on like game performance nowadays?
Well, I think my biggest problem with game performance as a whole, and this is on pretty much any platform, is that it seems like the publishers are more ready to just put something out there and then fix in post or fix it later kind of deal. So we get a lot of games that are optimized enough, they think, for the masses, and then they continue to work on it later. Or they'll tell like the reviewers, "Hey, we got a patch for day one. It'll fix all these problems," and that's part of it. But I think the publishers are probably the bigger guiltier party at this point, where they want their return on investment sooner than the product really being completed or finished and so forth. So I think that puts kind of sometimes the devs in a hard spot, and even the platforms in a hard spot, because, oh, well, this was a timed exclusive, or this might be an exclusive title, and yet the publisher is kind of pushing it out the door. And yes, the platforms can kind of, push back and say, hey, this doesn't meet certification, which I'm hearing stuff in the background that was part of the problem with Wukong, is that it comes up with a couple of error messages, similar to what some people may have been seeing even on PC, with like a memory leak and a few other issues. But on the console, if it if you have like one out of eight occurrences kind of thing, that's usually enough for it not to pass cert. So it might be a matter of maybe the standard of the cert is high or higher than what the dev was willing to do at launch kind of thing. But in any event, publishers a lot of times I feel are mainly to blame. But when it comes to the arguments about the Series S and stuff, and I'm not the biggest tech guy out there. I remember listening to a lot of the stuff that when these first kit or the PS5 dev kit as well as the series consoles devs kit were first being out there in the wild. The PS5 one was just basically an upgraded iteration of the PS4. So the coding and a lot of the steps
Pretty
of how
similar.
you would make a game, they were basically meant to be the same. It's just that, oh, well, you have a little more wiggle room in memory or a little bit more graphical fidelity or powered for that, higher resolution and stuff. So it wasn't far different from what some of these devs were doing for PS4 games. So it's like the next progressive step. Xbox, on the other hand, leaned heavily into the AMD, tool set, which I think was the better way to go. But a lot of devs aren't doing that unless they're strictly like PC related devs. Some of them might be, pushing into using the RDNA tool set to get the most performance out of it. But it seems like a majority of the console based devs and publishers aren't quite ready for that. We might see that next gen, or we might see that towards the end of this generation. But for right now, it's like they're fighting tooth and nail because it is different. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily harder, but it almost feels like if you're used to doing your job a certain way, and I tell you tomorrow you have to do it completely backwards and with your a blindfold on, even though that's not the same, but you would probably protest in the sense of what is this ridiculous? You want me to do everything different or completely change things? So I can understand some of the pushback in that regard, but when you have studios like Larian find out that hey, after they you know the engineers or the wizards like Jason Ronald probably gave them a visit or some of that team work with them on the certification of the game and things like that. They were able to find what was that like 30% improvement in performance. So it's
Yep.
like that's part of the technology being used to its advantage. And unfortunately, with Xbox kind of being, second or third place, however you want to look at it, for like the premium console business or the upscale console business, I think that's why we find some of these, at least the third party, not taking hold of the tools in the proper fashion. Because from my understanding, if you target the Series X, it's almost like a dial that you can dial it back for the Series S, where it's like, okay, it downscales it. Maybe you take ray tracing completely off the table or something along those lines. But it feels like there's enough room between the two where they're of the same, CPU sense of the chipset. It's an APU where it's a mixture of the video card and a CPU in one, but that CPU aspect of it is pretty close. It's like maybe a couple of megahertz slower clock, and the memory allocation is a little different. But I think the memory allocation is more so on the video card aspect of that APU, where instead of you having the full range, you're only dealing with like maybe 2 gigs out of four or something like that. So it's a matter of either scaling it down instead of it being 4K, scale it down to 1080p or 1440, or in some cases, like with the way Wukong is playing on PS5, maybe downscale it to 720 and then do the FSR to upscale it for the TV so it doesn't look too blurry, but you will still get that performance out of it because you're not pushing 4K resolution. Less pixels means less power needed, kind of thing. But where I do take some issue with Xbox's first party is that with the tools that they have, amongst the all the studios, which I'm glad to hear that a lot of them are working together and working with the different engines so that way something like the coalition can be a little bit more cats I don't know now, but the coalition could be a little bit more of a help to those that are working with Unreal, since they are the pretty much the experts within the Xbox family. That'll help a lot of them get across the finish line as far as getting the most performance out of their games. But with all of that being said, I think some of these games may have been started before RDNA, 2 was, the final, mechanism that they were going to use for their console. So some of these games that we're seeing were pre RDNA 2 time frame. So it feels weird that, some of them, like you said, have this vision of 30 frames. And then, oh, by the way, 6 months later, here's the 60 frames version, which it almost seems like they should have had that at release. But I'm kind of torn because I don't want them to delay the game just for a performance mode, but
Yeah.
I do understand those that do. And the problem that I have with, you know, performance modes with at least the third party, it has yet to be the case with first party, is that things like Hogwarts, they had a performance mode, which was, it was great that they had that, but it wasn't optimized, so it wasn't really performing like the performance mode it was supposed to be. So that to me, it seems like it almost should be delayed until that's fixed. So if you're going to have a performance mode, make sure it works out the gate. Like, I wouldn't say flawlessly, because I don't think anything can be flawless, but as close to that as you can. So that way you don't have some of the artifacts or particle, you know, issues and things like that on screen. So I don't know. I think that's part of where these devs and publishers and the platforms themselves have to come to some sort of agreement, whether it's, hey, everybody agreed that we're going to start with a target of 60 frames, or if we're not going to start with a target, let's make sure this thing runs as smooth as butter with great frame pacing and all that stuff for 30 frames, and let everybody know within the year of the launch you will have your 60 frames mode. Oh, but by the way, if you want it today, PC will have it day one. It'll come to console until they can get into the habit of maybe having that ready at day one for console. And I know that's going to be a stick in a lot of people's craw, as far as those that, you know, with Alan Greenberg saying, hey, yeah, that should be the standard. And it should be the standard. Unfortunately, a lot of, you know, dev teams don't seem to agree, or it's not on high on their priority list, or at least it seems like it's not high on the priority list. But it's, I don't know. This is part of the reason why I kind of am leaning more PC at this point, because at least based on what you build, you can kind of tweak things. And I don't necessarily want consoles to have it where I have 15 different options of ray tracing on or off, or, you know, things like that. The console experience has always been great, where you just pick up the button, hit the start button, and press play.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if I have the option to play, you know, performance mode 60 frames, or, you know, fidelity mode 4K 30 or whatever, that's great. But going further into that, I don't know if that's necessarily what I would want, but I know that there are some that would want a little more freedom or a little bit more options, because these things are almost as capable as some PCs, not necessarily the latest and greatest built today, but like in 2020, they were, I would say, closer. Like, the what we got in 2020 with these consoles was probably closer to what the higher end or upper end, not the top, but like the higher end in 2018, 2019 range. So it was close enough. It was like maybe a year or two behind, which previous consoles have always been like 4 years, 6 years or so
Yeah.
behind. So it's definitely an improvement, but kind of wondering what the next step or the next generation looks like at this point. But at that same on the same side, it's like, hey, can we get the devs on board with 60 frames being a standard? Like, let's put that bug in their ear today or something, so that way we don't have, you know, Aaron Greenberg, you know, overextend himself with a comment like, yeah, that should be the standard, but nobody told the devs out there, type of thing. So
Yeah, great points. I was writing some of yours down, so I didn't lose what were you saying. But like, if if the major difference from the last generation, from Xbox One to Series X, or from PS4 to PS5, the major difference to me should be not just fidelity but frame rate. Otherwise, what's the point? Because
yeah.
you have all this extra room, and again, this is what a lot of developers are. What they do with the extra room, I feel like, is not well done in the pipeline. It's not well optimized, and that's where targets help. When you have less room to work with, that's when developers get really smart. Like, look at the Nintendo Switch, for example.
Mhm.
Developers have to get really smart with the Switch.
Yeah.
Just because they do not have a lot of room to work with. And that almost works to their benefit, because
Mhm.
then you start figuring out how to properly optimize certain things. And you're like, oh, well, I can't do this because X, Y, and Z. And then you kind of work from there. Like, I feel like targeting has gotten insane nowadays, where let's just put everything in the game and then we'll optimize it later. That just always leads to crazy performance disparities, especially on the Unreal Engine. And you mentioned something. You said with the Unreal Engine, like
Mhm.
you mentioned something with like PlayStation. for example, and like there's no first party studios that uses Unreal Engine for PlayStation, which is so crazy because of how much money Sony has invested with Epic.
Mhm.
I'm just like, why? That's just my thing. Like, you're investing all this money and you're not even really using it. You have like third party people like I believe Wukong uses UE5. I don't know when they
Yeah.
transferred over. Um, but UE maybe it's 5.4. And there's a difference. Like I've been using Unreal Engine, and the newest version is very good optimization wise. It like it's still buggy though, which is why I feel like some developers are gonna wait a little bit, but they're getting better with optimizing certain things in the engine. If you guys are interested and you go look at Digital Foundry's Hellblade talk, they kind of go into what I'm kind of about to talk about, but with Hellblade 2, they realize that if they use Lumen and Nanite, those are super useful. But if you kind of use just like a little bit of Lumen and then you just use traditional methods, it's not as beneficial to your optimization. So you either go all in with Lumen and Nanite or don't do it, because you will have a very buggy kind of not very well optimized experience. Like either go all in and do it or don't do it at all. He also said something about like the RAM memory, and a couple of people in the chat mentioned this too, so I do kind of want to bring it up. Like with the Series S, that is the thing that people usually bring up with the RAM memory. And it is a problem for a lot of developers trying to fit that game on the Series S.
Mhm.
But I mean, my argument to that is still the same. Like with the minimum spec usually being lower than the Series S, and then also like figure it out at that point, because it's possible. And I've seen a couple of people in chat also talk about like, oh, I played games on my Series S and it's way better experience on the Series X. Like, of course, right? And I don't think anyone's comparing the experience from a Series S to X and being like the Series S is going to be way better than I don't think anyone's saying that. But I think the goal of the Series S has always been to have that frame rate stability, but have a lower resolution. And I feel like with some games that has been a very successful thing.
Mhm.
In others, it is like, nah, you could do better. So yeah, I mean, my stance for this has always been the same. Like with the developers, figured out your targeting early. Otherwise, you end up with games like Jedi Survivor, where no review site really talked about the performance. They're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be great. They rated it high. They're like EA told all these review sites that like, hey, I'm gonna fix it day one. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And then we play it, and it looks like I'm running in Vaseline, and my
Yeah.
character is falling into the floor and doing all this stuff, right? Um,
Yeah.
so it's all about targeting. Like the Jedi, what was the Fallen Order? I guess was the first one.
Hmm.
Fallen Order was a way better experience than Survivor. Yet Survivor's supposed to be the sequel, so it's all about like
Yeah.
how you optimize your game, how you do your experience, etc., etc. The last thing
Mhm.
I'll mention is you mentioned PC at the end,
Yeah.
um, which is like a lot of people want to go to the PC, or starting to go to the PC. And PC, I make jokes about this, but when you think about the console wars, um, PC's Gabe Newell is just he's the winner. He didn't have to do anything. He's
Yeah.
just winning just by default. It's not PlayStation, it's not Xbox. It is Gabe Newell just being like, oh, I guess people want to put stuff on my thing. Cool. And you just have to sit there and just win. And my whole thing that piece something that never appealed to me for PC personally is has always been like you have to be your own customer support. Like just now, right during the show, I had to figure out like why my screen was black or OBS was updating for no reason.
Yeah.
It's like there is that factor that consoles usually don't have to deal with. Like usually you just press play, you might get an error sometimes, but it's pretty rare. Um,
It's usually only if you're in the insider ring or something like that that you have to worry about errors on occasion. But
yeah, so like that's the cool part of it. It's like you get a pro. The pros for PC is a lot. You get the customizability, you get the performance. You could play things at if you have a really powerful card, play things at like 4K, 200 frames per second, things like that. I love that. But then the con is you have to be your own customer support agent. Your graphics card might need to be updated. You might have to do little things here and there, like you install a game but then it stops working, you have to figure out why. And then like some, I don't know if they've started fixing this with games, but with PC co-op games, it's like if you need to do split screen, for example, it usually doesn't have it on PC, or it's usually a little weird to figure that out on a PC.
yeah.
Those are the cons for me. Not a lot of people point out, but I besides that, I am starting to like PC. I just hate this is where my PC is. Like I don't want to sit out in my chair all day and play on my PC. That's just the thing. If I can somehow get a new PC where I can basically set it up like my living room, then that would be the best, probably the best experience. Because I like sitting on my couch, separating myself from work. This is where I work too. And yeah, PC's not that yet, but maybe in the future. So yeah, great points. Let's go to chat before we go to the second topic. Calorie said there has been a post-COVID issue with studios and shipping complete games. I think performance isn't being prioritized due to the longer and longer development times. Maybe because of work from home. That is a good point. I remember when I worked at Ubisoft and we were doing mocap in the closet, in our closet at home. So that's not too crazy to think about. I do remember that time game development was interesting because a lot of game development studios are built for the studio, not necessarily you going home and like, let me work on this level, right? Because of like if you go in the studio, they have like cloud servers usually. This is like how we share data and files, but when you step outside of that, it can become a security risk. Like if I just have like like Fable, for example, I worked on Fable. Like, let me just have Fable on my desktop. That's just a security risk, right? Your computer can have all sorts of stuff. So when you start to work from home, that's a thing a lot of studios started to figure out during COVID. They figure like, let's make it so people can tune into computers, cloud, through the cloud and things like that. I'm not going to completely speak to that because I don't know what's under NDA or not, but that was a thing a lot of studios started to kind of figure out. Got Poison Maniac says, kind of like how the Series S benefited Baldur's Gate 3 across all platforms for how much more efficient they had to be for it to work threefold. Call me threefold. Yeah. You guys got great conversations in chat. I appreciate y'all. The Sousa says, doesn't seem to be a huge jump between the Xbox One X and these consoles outside of, say, Hellblade 2. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you got all of this new power, all this new thing in the box, and developers are like, let's keep making 30 FPS. And I'm just like, what is the difference then? If your target is 30 FPS, you might as well just like keep developing for the older consoles, because the benefit should be like better frame rates and yeah, some cool, good resolution. But I feel like the target is not being properly done in my opinion. That's just me. Prince Green says, interesting Pixel. I'm a fellow designer for 14 years now. I do multimedia designs. What software do you use? And are you still in advertisement? What's your CPU you use? So yes, I'm working in advertisement right now. I do the Aflac commercials. I do Auto Trader, Holiday Inn, a bunch of different brands. So I've left the gaming industry side of things, but I was uh I was more so on the art side, but I did dive into tech side sometimes. But more so on the art side, whether that's level environments, UI development, a little bit of effects, but not like I'm not very good at effects. I can get away with it. Like if someone's like stepping in a puddle, for example, like you just seen in Wukong, and you could have a little ripples and stuff like that. Eh, I could probably do some cool things there, but I am mostly in the design side of things. Animation as well. The animation's my forte though. So if you look at my portfolio and things like that, it's mostly animation based. So making sure that the systems work together. Nowadays, we have things in Unreal where you can blend animation systems. So that's a lot of what I did um, working at different companies is like work with those animation blending systems. Like it's kind of what you see in a not to go on a game developer rant, but like uh there's a lot of animations that like in Assassin's Creed, for example, they use the same animations over and over, but they might change like little things. So there's like a library that a lot of studios start to build over time, so they could just reuse the same animations over and over, but they might like change the jump to feel a little bit better. They might change like the sword swing and things like that, but that's why you'll see the same animations over and over in these games. It's because they have a library. But I'll probably go in there and like add in different animations and things like that. Yeah. Calorie said, ever thought of making your own game? You could have the next Vampire Survivors. I've made my own game. It's not worth looking up. It's called Abandoned. Yes, I know, Abandoned. Wow, someone used my game name. But yeah, if you could look up some stuff for it if you go to abandonthevideogame.com. I think it's still up. Um, but I've done like basic outside of the AAA game space. I've done some small games, but yeah, I should get back into it. I'm just been in commercial land. Um, let's see. I'll do a couple more. So 30 isn't a deal breaker. This is from the Sousa. 30 isn't a deal breaker, but I thought we would have moved past it by now. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Making too much sense. 3-bit. Yeah. Appreciate y'all. Yeah. So let's get into the second topic. So I have my own thoughts on this. I actually want you to lead this, Fuzz, and then I'll get into my spiel. Um, but this is basically about like media protection, like with Sony and things like that. Um, so we kind of talked about this. I believe was that yesterday? Yeah, we talked
Yeah.
about it a little bit yesterday. But the basic topic, um, Sony protecting uh they're protecting their devs through
Mhm.
media outlets, journalists, all the things. Go ahead, tell us what's going on in the gaming industry.
Yeah. Like the biggest thing that we've probably all noticed, whether we're, on podcasts or just on social media or just, scouring the internet for gaming news in general, if it's Xbox related, you'll see. what I would refer to as hit pieces to some extent, where it's like, oh, Microsoft did layoffs. How is that? That's bad for gaming, and how it's so terrible. But when PlayStation has the same thing, it's like, oh, pray for the devs. Make sure that let's not talk about it too much, but like, hopefully they'll have they'll land well, and blah, blah, blah. It's like two sides of the same coin kind of thing. But if it's the green side, it's always going to be with a negative connotation to it to some extent. It's to make it seem like Microsoft shouldn't be in this business. And I get some of the sentiment of, as far as like Microsoft or Windows being this big bad guy in the tech world to some extent, when some people's eyes, and in the past they kind of were, when it was Bill Gates running the ship and stuff, and it was like monopoly on web browsers and stuff. But it's a totally different, well, I wouldn't say totally different company. They're still aggressive at making money as a whole, but it's a different atmosphere as far as when it comes to gaming. They're not trying to, and I guess most evident to show that they're not trying to control the entire market. They just rather be the ones that are bringing in the most money, or bringing in money or revenue from various things. They don't want to have all of their eggs in one basket. So it's a different Microsoft, but the media still uses them as the whipping boy for all bad stuff that goes on in gaming. It's either the Series S is at fault, Game Pass is at fault, or just Xbox in general is at fault. But Sony has done some egregious stuff in the past, and it always is overlooked. It's more like you'll find out later, page 3, footnote in Jason Schreier's book or something, that, oh yeah, they fired the same amount of people, if not more, than what Microsoft did in a shorter period of time. But that won't ever make front page. That won't ever be the leading off topic. The leading off topic now, especially with Concord being the latest example of when a company either launches a game tone deaf or is oblivious to what their consumer base wants. And it's not a knock on the devs. It's not a knock on any one individual, but you have to look at the great landscape of hero shooters or arena-based shooters and things like that. And in the past, some have done well, some have not done so well on PlayStation. Like Overwatch is probably the main one, whether it was because of Blizzard or Activision, or now with Microsoft owning them, whatever the case is, Overwatch was the one that rose to the top. And there have been several others that have risen to the top, but Overwatch, I would say, is probably one of the bigger ones on the console space. There are some other ones that are definitely making ground that just recently came to console, that have been on PC for a minute or two. But Concord, seeing that landscape, or the Firewalk devs seeing that landscape, were like, yeah, we're going to throw our hat in the ring. Now, remember, Ninja Theory did something similar with Bleeding Edge, and it was criticized before it was even launched, kind of thing. Like, it was,
Yep.
well, one, Microsoft was criticized for even getting Ninja Theory. Like, why would they buy Ninja Theory? And then two, there was already hints of mismanagement this and mismanagement that, because they're letting them do a passion project. Like, I thought it was about, hey, saving the devs or supporting the devs, and if this is something they want to do, let them do it. And they found out that it maybe wasn't quite what they had hoped it to be, but it at least allowed them to be creative and get a game out there. And it didn't do as well, but it did better than what Concord is doing. But all in all, there were more pieces about how this was a failure on Xbox, this was a failure on Ninja Theory, this was a failure in gaming in general. But now we have Concord, and it's like, well, you should really give it a chance. Okay, people gave it a chance in beta. There was more people playing it in beta than what actually when it launched. There were more people watching it on Twitch being played by people that were trying to get people interested in it than were actually playing the game. And still, even after those people saw it, or still after the people played it in beta, a lot of those numbers, whether it be because they were free and they got in because of a friend code or something like that, decided, I'm good. I don't need this game. And that should have been a moment where PlayStation themselves or Firewalk themselves adjusted the plan. They should have, gone out there and say, hey, free to play, or maybe we put this back in the oven for a bit. Now, I'm pretty sure Sony and Hiroki Totoki was like, no, I want my money. This has been 8 years in development for what we hear. Yeah, it's time for you guys to, cash out kind of thing. We want our return on investment. But all of that said, there's like no conversations in the gaming media about that. No conversations about how this was the chosen child by Bungie versus factions versus the Spider-Verse. And I know we say a lot about how those games would have been successful, and my gut tells me they would have been tenfold more successful
Yeah.
than what Concord is today. There's no guarantee on that, but all things aside, it seems like Bungie basically got rid of their competition, picked this that was kind of like their stepchild in a way, because to my understanding, some of those devs were former Bungie devs, and maybe they felt Marathon was going to be the better version. So yeah, of course these guys can go out there because we'll knock it out of the park with Marathon. Which when they tried to go to their target audience, even that got shot down by people that played Escape from Tarkov. They're like, I wouldn't play this. I'd go back to Escape from Tarkov. This isn't holding my attention. And now we're hearing Marathon might be a hero shooter now.
Yep.
So it's like nobody's talking about that. Like Jason Schreier, and there was a few others that had talked about, some of the issues with Bungie, but it's like they're not putting it in writing. They're not doing the articles like where's the mismanagement articles on Bungie? Where's the mismanagement articles on Sony with all of these gas games 10 to 12 originally, and then like more than half of them being canceled. There's no mismanagement articles anywhere about that. There's no articles about how Concord may have been the right game at the wrong time or the wrong game for this time, or however you want to word it. Something better than, oh, give it a chance. No, people gave it a chance. It's going to only live as long as Sony's willing to keep the lights on. And, if Sony's track record is anything to refer to, they're not going to keep the lights on for much longer. I mean, even Foam Stars is going free to play. Yes, that's not first party, but all of that being said, that goes to show that this is something that when you look to the gaming media for fairness, balance, or at least newsworthy things or things that are happening in the gaming industry, they're all crickets right now when it comes to this game. And maybe because some of them are friends with the developers. And I get that. I consider us friends, but I know if you make a game, I might not, put it out there, oh, this is the worst game since sliced bread. No, I'm not doing that. But I would at least say, hey, I didn't enjoy my time, or I enjoyed these things. Here's things I would change. There's not even those articles out there. And that's what kind of bothers me, that the gaming media can't separate their friendship from their actual jobs. I get that. You don't want to criticize your friends, but at some point, if you're going to be a journalist or a gaming media person, you have to be able to do that and separate yourself from friendships and what your job task is. And hopefully your friends would understand that. And you're not doing it maliciously. You're not doing it out of spite or anything like that. You're doing it because this may be the stuff either the friend or the people that run the studio where your friend works need to hear. It's not that your friend did a bad job. It's that the powers that be may have put this up to die or fail for whatever reason when they could have made better choices or changed things. Like I personally, I still feel, not to say close Firewalk by any means. No, if anything, have that crew pick up where Naughty Dog left off on factions. Let them carry that ball. And we all saw how the day before was wish listed so greatly on Steam. Let them try and recreate that, because basically they have the lore and the name and the cachet behind it to be able to pull that game off of what people thought that game should be. Turn factions into that, and I guarantee you're going to definitely do better than what you're doing now with Concord. But then again, there have been other people in the community, like me and Pung have said before, like this Guardians of the Galaxy thing. I know it's a running joke now. Oh, it's like
Yeah.
Dollar Store Guardians of the Galaxy, but truth be told, make it a co-op player or a co-op shooter game that's based on something like that. I mean, look at your one of their more successful games, although they've kind of shot it in the foot. Divers 2 was successful as a co-op game. Make this a co-op game being kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy. I think there's enough there that people would enjoy that. I think enough people would be willing to pay the $40 because you have a mix of co-op, you have some story, you have the fun of shooting with friends and the camaraderie with that. Like that's why games like Left 4 Dead and all that stuff do well. It's just that it's not going to be against zombies. You're in space against, other, entities, and maybe you're trying to get, whatever, valuables or collectibles and things like that from region to region, and jump in your spaceship and head off back to your planet or to wherever the trader dealers and stuff like that are. That to me would be a much more interesting game that I would even be willing to pay for. I mean, I bought Helldivers 2 primarily because it looked like it was fun. It looked like you're living the Super Trooper or not Super Troopers, but Starship Troopers
Yes.
in a video game life. Like that made more sense to me. But kudos to Firewalk. Hopefully they can survive this, black eye as far as this game, or rebound in a way much like we've seen with Rainbow Six Siege and other games that the developers or the publishers took more time or invested more time and money to continue on to bring them to something that was going to be marketable. But I really am disappointed is probably the best way to put it. Not that father disappointment, but not too far off kind of
I'm
disappointment
not
where
mad.
it's like where is the gaming media to talk about this stuff? Like if it was Xbox, you best believe they're like, oh, this is just poor management of Xbox. This is on Matt Booty's head, and this is on Phil's head, and even Sarah's head because she should have said something. No, we know that there would have been tons of articles. Like they still try and do articles about how people forgot about Starfield, and it's like if you forgot about Starfield, then why are you writing the article that would go against that you forgot about it? But
Yeah.
that's here or there. But they're quick to do those types of articles, but nothing whatsoever on this. Nothing even on like Black Myth Wukong with the performance issues that it's running into on the PlayStation. Like that's another thing. If it looks like it could hurt a sale of a PlayStation 5, the media will be mum about it. But if it looks like it could hurt the sale of an Xbox console, it's front page and they're retweeting it and reposting it, and they got a 15-minute video for the next week, every day for the next week about it. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Great points, man. I've been writing down a lot of yours. As of now, their Black Myth Wukong released on August 19th. There has been 6 PS5 critic reviews posted. 6. Just and 72, 75 on the PS5. You guys could go check as of the recording of this episode. Just 6. And I someone on my Twitter was posting like, oh, maybe they're taking their time and playing it. This was for I don't think this was for Black Myth. This is, well, maybe it was for Black Myth. I think it was for Black Myth. Was like, oh, maybe they're taking their time, they're playing the game. No, this is for Concord, actually. Concord is a very similar situation if you look up the reviews. They're taking their time, and then I compared. I was like, here are other live service games which the media hated. I showed Redfall. I showed Suicide Squad. Look at the dates of when those games released, and look at the dates of when it was reviewed. Mm-hmm. It's like everyone is watching this episode right now. I encourage you to go look at those games and then compare it to any live service Sony game. Mm-hmm. It is staggering of like when they decide to review the game, or how they protect it. It's actually very interesting. It's a good case study. Someone should do an article on that.
Well, one quick caveat. The funny thing is with Suicide Squad, they didn't even give out the codes early. they made a lot of those reviewers wait until the day it released. So
Yep.
the fact that they were ready that same day, I don't know. I think there was a target on Suicide Squad from get go versus Concord. It's like kid gloves, no touch.
Yeah, yeah. I think if I looked at the date for the Suicide Squad review, I think it took a day or two for them to review it, if I'm not mistaken. It took like 2 days. And again, it's let me just double check. Black Myth Wukong was released on August 19th. It is the 27th, and there's 6 reviews for a game that has been like talked about, selling very well. Why is there 6 reviews on Black Myth Wukong for the PS5 and 75 for the PC? Insane, right? And then it reminds me of the Insomniac leak, where all these developers, all these journalistic sites basically went into protection mode, like, oh, this is terrible to happen in the industry. This, all these, we're not going to talk about it because there was personal info leaked. What is a leak? It is personal info, right?
Mhm.
We're not gonna cover it. And then Xbox would have a leak, not even that long after Insomniac, by the way, and then immediately cover it. That's just the stuff we kind of talk about. Like if you're gonna like critique a game like Redfall and stuff and say like, oh, it needs work here and there, like, I agree. I think Redfall, I did not like Redfall at all. I thought it felt bare bones to me. It didn't feel very well polished. I was not feeling it.
Mhm.
So yeah, call that out. But when you get a game like Concord and you are entering a market, you mentioned like Overwatch, you're entering a market that is super saturated. So if you're going to be a hero shooter, if I'm like, you know what, I'm going to make a hero shooter, you have a lot to build on. You have a lot of expectations that, like, why should you be in the hero shooter space? What are you doing differently? How are you uh differentiating yourself? Because let me tell you, there's a lot of hero shooters.
Yeah.
So how did they decide to differentiate themselves? They decided to charge you money, right? Like, you are going against some of the best hero shooters. Overwatch is free for the most part. You buy a bunch of skins and stuff like that. Sure, free. You're going against Marvel rivals. You're going against so many other games in the space, and you decide to not make it free to play, pay $40 for it. It's insane to me. That they thought it was a great idea. You are you have Gollum having more players than you. That is interesting, right? A Gollum out of all games. That's a game I always make fun of because I was like, ooh, I'm actually really excited for Gollum because I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. You having Smeagol, you being able to play as Smeagol and stealth. Like, oh, that's a cool idea. Terrible game. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Bleeding Edge, the game that the media constantly said it was an awful game.
Mhm.
That Ninja Theory should stick to what they're good at and all this different stuff. Maybe you should turn those same articles to Sony live service games, because Bleeding Edge had more
Mhm.
players than Concord,
Yeah.
right? The game that was a failure. Um, but now when you look at Concord articles, like, oh, it's a good game. It's, what was it? What was the word used? Tepid something.
Yeah.
Tepid experience, or whatever, what they said. And this goes. It really reminds me of Hiroki Totoki when he talked about, like, that they need to start focusing on hardware sales to determine. They shouldn't, look at hardware sales to determine success. And it reminds me of stuff like this. Like,
Mhm.
Xbox has less players than PlayStation, yet a lot of their games have more players. Have people ever wondered why that is? It's like, yeah, PlayStation has more people on who bought the hardware, but why is it that Xbox gets more people? I'm not even counting. I'm counting even before they bought Activision Blizzard, right? They had more people on Halo. They had more people on Gears of War. They had more people in Sea of Thieves. They had a ton of people in Sea of Thieves before they put on PlayStation. And it's just like, those are the articles I kind of want to see. Like, why is it that PlayStation gets the benefit of the doubt so many times when they have fired just as much people, if not more, than Xbox? Yet Xbox has more employees. Why is it that, like, you get like Bungie, for example, they cancel The Last of Us 2 for the that we've heard of, and you know they cancel that game, which would have been great, I think. But and you decide like, hey, Concord is a hero shooter. Let's do 2 hero shooters in case it doesn't work out. That's a great idea, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention Sony paying $2.2 billion for to keep their employees, and then like a year later firing 100 employees. Like, that's the stuff you will never get an article about, right? Like, I don't mind you talking about like Xbox firing people or that stuff, but it's just not equal. Like what Fuzzy was kind of saying, and I wrote down, it's like a footnote.
Mm-hmm.
It is a footnote in an article. Like, you'll get like, oh yeah, and the language is always different. I remember, you guys should look this up. I can't remember where it is, but it was when Xbox decided to have MKV support for the Xbox One. This was a long time ago. There was an article from the same, I believe it was the same writer too. He wrote on the top, Xbox allows you to pirate movies, right? Just look this up. Xbox allows you to pirate movies by adding MKV support. Did the same, and then PlayStation eventually did it. And then the title read for PlayStation allows MKV support.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's so interesting to me. Just like, look at the language that the media is using. It's so blatant to me. I just find myself laughing when I just think about the comparison, like of like how PlayStation hasn't had a really good showcase in the last 2-3 showcases, but it's coming. You know, that's always the thing. It's coming. They're working. They're cooking.
It's a super secret second showcase.
Yeah. Super secret showcase. It's coming up the horizon. And listen, I would just encourage everybody who's watching, just, you know, do your research, find what you value. If you value stuff in PlayStation, you love the lineup, cool. I'm not discarding that. I think PlayStation has some cool games here and there. I'm just talking about the media in general, right? I'm not even necessarily attacking PlayStation. I'm attacking the people around PlayStation that refuse to ever critique it, or critique it with this really huge oven mitts. So yeah, interesting things. I do want to I put up, like, I talked about this I posted this maybe a year or two ago. I put it up on the screen where I talk about Xbox tax, and I just wanted to just revisit this, because I feel like everything I said here, this was like a year, maybe almost 2 years ago I wrote this. It's the Xbox tax thing, right? I talk about the Xbox tax. People say, oh, you're crazy, there is no Xbox tax. I look back at this time too. This post was brought up to Destin Legary live, and then he didn't want to address it. People talked about it. They were bringing up my post. I'm not gonna read the whole thing because it's kind of long, but I encourage you guys. It's up on the screen. You can pause the video, just read it. See if it's still relevant right now. I feel like it is. Um, just give it a read. I'll wait. You can pause the video, check it out, read it. Let me know what you guys think. So let's see what the chat is up to. And then we'll head to whatever our third topic is. Let's see. Fuzzy, do you think PlayStation wants to do games as a service games? This is from Bold Alpha Wolf, or just looking for a new streams of constant revenue?
Yeah, I think. Wait, let me see. Yeah, I think for the most part they want that revenue. That's a definite. And I think they've come to the realization that games as a service is the best way to do it. It almost feels like there's like two forces over at PlayStation. Some still pulling towards this games as a service being the way to go to get that money. And I think Hiroki Totoki is kind of on that side. And then there's the other side that wants to go back to what they were doing, not realizing that those are the more costly games that only have like a one time to get the money out of the consumer kind of deal. But I really wish they would reevaluate like the cancellation of what we've heard rumors of with Twisted Metal, or that military shooter that what was it, Deviant or something like that, games or something that
Oh
was
yeah.
making. It was probably SOCOM or something SOCOM like those are things that they should look at, or bring back Resistance and make that a multiplayer games as a service, season pass, battle pass, or whatever kind of you know uh, different or alternative history World War II with aliens game. Like I think there's a big enough area or niche for a game like that to survive and make them money. But like factions, I think is one that seems like it should be super easy for them to make money off of. And that Spider-Verse thing, like I can't imagine where they couldn't make money off of the skins. Like it may not be the ultimate blockbuster that we see with things like the way Warzone is right now, or anything along the lines of like how successful things like Forza Horizon has been as far as player counts and car packs and stuff like that. But I think it would probably get them to understand how to appeal to that customer base or to that player base that wants those multiplayer games that have a Sony spin to them or a Sony license. But like Big Man Mo was saying, it's like they don't have a roadmap. So it's like it's either they need to figure out this games as a service, or they need to get back to work and figure out how to make these single player games. But right now, it just feels like there's the only thing that we know that's potentially coming from them is Marathon, which, like I said, it's sounding like it's going to be a hero shooter now instead of the extraction shooter it was supposed to be. And we know a fair game because they kind of showed that, and that looked like it was like a payday 3 knockoff. Like if I was somebody in Jade Raymond's studio, I'd be like, can before we get put out to pasture, just like Concord, can we make this like GTA Online a little bit more, like not just do the heist stuff, but also maybe we add cars, maybe we add apartments or businesses that you can buy with the money you steal, kind of thing, just to kind of keep people engaged. Because if they just do the payday 3 thing where it's like, oh, you rob a bank, and then what do you buy with the stuff that you rob the bank? But better guns or better clothes or outfits. They better figure out that hook real quick, because if they don't, it may be more successful than Concord, but we're talking like small percentages. Like, yeah, if you get 1,000 players, you're doing better than Concord at this point. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not looking good for Team Blue in that regard, but I still want to see Ghost of Tsushima 2 at some point. They need to hurry up and unveil that. Maybe a Gran Turismo 8.
Yep.
But I before Gran Turismo 8, I'd rather have Gran Turismo 7 on PC. Like they need to stop screwing around and dipping their toe in the water with this PC business and go full boat. Like people will support it. It's just your loyalists push back, but they'll probably support it too, because a lot of the people that we see on Twitter that are like, oh, they'll never go to PC, are the same ones that have these PCs, because they always talk about how they enjoy playing their Xbox games on their PC instead of a console. So
Yeah,
they might as well just embrace it.
might as well. And there's like a guaranteed amount of money you can make with Spider-Man online and The Last of Us, because those are established franchises, right? It's why we keep getting the remakes that they keep making, but it's also why, like, nostalgically, Hollywood only wants to do the same franchises over and over, because it's like a guaranteed seat almost. Like, by making Ghostbusters that, like, you're playing on someone's nostalgia and feels. Oh, we got Mav in the building. Hold on.
Mav.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I gotta set you up. Hello. Welcome,
I'm
man.
just a little late. What's up, guys? How's it going?
We are going right into the almost the Xbox tax conversation. Like, let me fix your camera.
Hi, chat. Are we like we're I'm like right in the studio. That's cool. It did like It didn't even have me in the background or whatever. It just like I'm here.
Yeah, I just went
Magic.
for it.
It's amazing.
And I figured, like, I might have to do this. Let me see. Okay, we're good. We are good. How you doing, man?
Good. Sorry, I've been running around. I got stuck in limbo. We're waiting on like a grocery order to be ready for pickup and stuff. But got back in time. I was hoping you would still be live, because wanted to hang out and talk whatever we're going to talk about, because y'all are two of my favorite people, and it's a fun night as always to talk gaming. So
we're just going through the chat right now, but we're kind of talking about media production, and I do want to hear your thoughts on that. Kind of just talked about, I don't know, how the media protects Sony in a lot of ways, and then that kind of rippled to conversations with what Sony kind of needs to do with some of their franchises, like Spider-Man and The Last of Us, and then we were just kind of just talking to talk, feeling out what people are saying in the chat. So I do want to hear what you guys say, but let me read some more chat messages, and then we'll get to what your point of view is on some of the stuff going on. We got where was I? Oh yeah, so Big Mad Mo. A couple people said, like, they want me to read my Xbox tax thing. They're like, I don't want to read, so I will read it to you guys, and then we'll get into Mav's point of view on the whole Xbox tax situation. So I got it up. So this is a post I made almost a year ago. It went through the kind of like different shows. Destin brought it up at one point on his show, or didn't want to bring it up. But yeah, I feel like it's still relevant. So this is what I wrote. I wrote Xbox tax. Internally, it's known throughout several studios to prioritize PlayStation versions of a game first due to its overall popularity, which can lead to performance disparities depending on time in development and priorities. It's commonly known throughout many third-party studios that PlayStation is the priority, then porting versions of their game to an Xbox, which can leave out key graphical and optimization features in its dev kits. I believe that priority sentiment carries throughout the industry in my experience, and carries through a biased mentality. The PlayStation first mentality is also seen with review copies, with most reviewers preferring or having a preference to playing or reviewing a game on PlayStation first, and I've seen this countless amount of times. An Xbox game can review well initially, but receive negative coverage for months afterwards. Halo, Starfield, Call of Duty, Sea of Thieves, or be opted out of categories of conversation. multi-platform games tend to also have more reviews in general on PlayStation. Even more favorable outlets choose to sometimes opt out of Xbox coverage or copies overall. I've personally seen outlets reject Xbox copies of a game, which I have. It's not crazy to me to equalize PlayStation's popularity to favorable bias. It has more users and a bigger fan base, and generally gets more favor for anything negative due to premium games. And as I mentioned, most reviewers choose to not even have an Xbox copy of a game. And then I conclude. And in my honest opinion, you do not see the same energy with PS products or games in terms of negative articles. No multitude of articles asking about where Last of Us Factions is. This was around that time. Or asking about the players dropping in a game months after launch, like Starfield, a single player game. No asking about KOTOR's status at the time. Multitude of studios that have had layoffs of 100 plus people, their pipeline, lack of showcases, or any hint of negativity toward a portable device that isn't great at being portable. I was talking about, the PlayStation Portal. Getting higher review scores than the Steam Deck. That was crazy. There's a lot of reviews on the same sites giving the PS Portal higher reviews than the Steam Deck. I'm just like, really? No series of articles about upcharging for a service without any improvements, or is there an article? If there is an article, it's buried with a multitude of articles why you should forget a game like Starfield. Barely a peep throughout many industry outlets on a variety of topics of anything that's negative about PlayStation. So in my opinion, if there is a bias, I don't think it's a bad thing to point out that the media prefers PlayStation, and it reads that Xbox can be a hindrance to these people in a lot of scenarios. So that's what I wrote a while ago. It kind of goes into what we've been talking about, where we mentioned like the MKV thing with Xbox. I mentioned this, Mav, earlier, where there was an article where Xbox had Xbox supports piracy because now it supports MKV files, and the same site had it when PlayStation eventually did it. It said PlayStation supports MKV files. And just the language that the media likes to use is very interesting sometimes. So I know you kind of just thrust into our conversation, but I want to see what you think about it. And we kind of do talk about it in different contexts. What do you think generally about how the media seems to be protecting, or do you not agree? I know you do agree, but let's just play devil advocate. You don't agree. What do you think about everything?
Well, I think it kind of just goes in hand with the bigger problem with this media coverage and gaming in general, is that there is objectivity is dead out the window, and it's all about personal feelings and opinions and biases. I mean, like, they went as far as that one site to not even check who they were allowing to be in the reviews roundtable, and they had the Dreamcast guy show up there. And these journalists have always tried to say they're above and beyond clickbait, they're above and beyond, grifting, they're above and beyond this and that. They have special privilege. They understand the industry. They have special access to developers, to publishers, to information that nobody else gets. So they look at things from a better perspective than the average gamer or just the person who's out there looking for attention and stuff. Yet now what you see is that's what media is. That's what games media is. And they've slowly over time been converting to be more of just the same thing as YouTube or other podcasters or personalities, just in written format. And it's all about the personality and personal feelings and biases, and that there's no more actual check marks of, hey, we need to make sure that we're giving fair and even coverage to everything, to balanced coverage or anything like that. It's just about, hey, what's most popular here? What's going to get the most attention? What's going to get the most clicks, right? And because ultimately we're about advertising, we're about clicks, and we're about supporting our partners as well. And we know who is one of the biggest partners with a lot of these games media sites is actually PlayStation themselves. Hence why I think you see a lot of kid gloves articles written when there's something negative about them. They're afraid. Now, some say, like y'all brought up about hey, there's people that have friends in the industry, and we know all that too. Like, there's a lot of crossover here. Like, even just from when I started this YouTube channel, now I know several different people that have been in the development world or have happened to work for Microsoft or like it happens to watch our shows and stuff like that. And it's like there's a lot of crossover between all that. And it's like you don't want to offend people, but at the same time, you just want to be true to yourself and be honest. But as a games journalist, when you're working for especially some of the biggest publications out there, and instead of like let's say you're just a personal blogger or whatever like that, like, I think you have a kind of a responsibility to go out there and be fair. And being fair doesn't mean always being positive. Being fair means giving the equal criticism when it's due, and not ignoring failures.
Yep.
So that's the part that is weird, because it's not even just about like PlayStation, Xbox. It's also just about personal, like, hey, this game, we all want to hop on board the bandwagon of love and support for it right now. This game, because we don't decide equally in our hive mind mentality that we don't like something about it, we're going to bandwagon against it and promote the failure and destruction of it. And almost celebrate when it doesn't do well. And that can be for great games, it can be for mediocre games, it can be for bad games, but it seems like in some cases it's like, no, hey, let's just make sure that we don't do that this time. We're above that. Like, even some of us, like one of the same articles, I think it was PC Gamer, had an article about, hey, aren't we kind of above like celebrating failures of games when they like celebrate failures of games in their clickbait articles all the time? Like, so why are you all of a sudden now changing that because your game that you liked, that you were excited for, is actually suffering the demise of general public and opinion? The same kind of general public and opinion that you usually permeate and actually celebrate the destruction of other games for. Like, there's no even mentality here. There's no fair objectivity.
Tepid.
They just kind of always speak from just, hey, this is our feels, right? There's obviously in the industry a preference towards PlayStation, and that makes sense, right? Like, over the last generation, they dominated for the hardcore gaming market and hardware sales. But it doesn't mean that Xbox is bad. It doesn't mean that the games are bad. It doesn't mean that they don't have great things or they aren't doing great things and all these other things. They tend to ignore all that stuff. And part of the problem is it does get ignored, makes it harder for Xbox to possibly be able to kind of overcome that. But it's also when PlayStation does have its failures, it keeps that egg off the face. It protects their image. It protects their, like, hey, yeah, this is one off. Hey, it doesn't even matter. I've seen a lot of people say, well, people don't care that PlayStation's had this failure now because, well, they have a track record of great first-party games, and nobody else, Xbox doesn't have that. So we went through and like what our last show, we actually kind of looked at this generation and kind of looked at all the first-party games and all this other kind of stuff, and it's like, and especially if you look ahead at what's coming up, or it was stuff that's supposed to matter, what's soon, right? And especially this year, it's like, well, what are we talking about here? So ultimately, it's something that I don't think it's going to change like in a minute, in a month, in a year. It's going to be something over time with the mentality of gamers changing, and it's going to take numerous wins for the games out there that have to be so good that the games media looks ridiculous for trying to sabotage, right? Because Xbox has delivered so many of these games that have been really good.
Yeah.
But they still don't qualify as that, oh, that's a massive, huge success, something like to celebrate in the gaming sphere. They can have great games. They can have 80s. They can have like high 80s, low 80s, all these other stuffs that are celebrated as like amazing, huge moments for other platforms. But for Xbox, it's like, it's not good enough. When are they going to do the game? Right?
It's like, even when a game does well, this is the interesting part, does well, but like generally just terrible performance like Black Myth, they still protect Sony, uh, because right now, I mean, we mentioned this earlier in the show, having 6 reviews for PS5, crazy, absolutely crazy. It's a game that is probably one of the most hyped up games right now, and you're saying there's only 6 critic reviews for the PS5. I mean, I digress, but I feel like that's insane.
Yeah, especially coming from the media where we know a lot of them prefer to play on
Yeah.
PlayStation consoles based on the review counts in the past, right? So
Yeah.
there's obviously a reason behind that. Now, it could have been a preference on review codes sent out by the developer as well, right? Of what they provided. But for me, I'm thinking that by now you would have had a lot more of these outlets put out their PlayStation reviews, even if they were only provided with the PC codes. Because guess what? They can afford to get one of those games if they absolutely have to. You know, like like other people in the world, like you would think that they would see value in actually having a review to draw attention and clicks and stuff for their website to make money and revenue and advertising, even if they weren't provided a code
Yeah.
for review. Like, so for me, I'm thinking like there's a reason why they're not going and doing these PlayStation reviews as well. So they will eventually, probably when the game's patched.
But which is so crazy to me. Like they, for example, Suicide Squad, where they bashed the game for months before it even came out. They definitely bashed them when they're like, "Oh, we're not doing early review codes and stuff." Look at the dates, and I was mentioning this earlier. Look at the dates of when they reviewed Suicide Squad, because a lot of journalists really wanted to review that game and hate on it. A lot more reviews. IGN reviewed it like a day or two after. A live service game, the game that they need to take their time on and all this different stuff. You didn't get review codes on. Took a day or two to review that game, the game that you hate. So it's like, it's like certain things a lot of journalists tend to do is like hate seems to really fuel them to want to write an article or give them a low score, or they know it's gonna get a certain amount of reaction, but if they feel like it's gonna hurt Sony in any way, that's where like, oh, let's take our time, let's wait for a patch, let's, you know, it's so crazy to me that I keep seeing this, or their lack of actually doing their job with something like Star Wars, which we talk about. Was it Jedi or was it Survivor? I think it was. I mean, Jedi Fallen Order was pretty buggy on launch, but Survivor was crazy buggy. Yeah. So it was Survivor.
Survivor was so bad at launch and especially on console. I don't know what the PC version was like, but the all the reviews caused me so much FOMO for that game that I ended up getting it like day one and stuff. And I remember getting it and I was like, what's happening? This was praised as like this huge leap forward and it's supposed to be amazing and look great and play great and all this stuff. And like they said that there was some issues, but EA promised that they are aware of them are going to be fixed. And that's as much of it mentioned, like with the problems with it. Yeah. So like we brought this game up initially, like right away when we were having experiences with it, like really bad, and especially for such a high profile title. And we were like, "What's going on? Wow, how come none of the reviews are like mentioning all of this stuff?" But then at the same time, there was like High on Life had like one bug, like in one level for like one of the games media sites, and they had wrote like a whole like paragraph about it, and it was like detrimented their score greatly and stuff. And like you saw them not even mention anything with Jedi Survivor, and it was so weird at the time. And that's why I'm saying it's not just about like console preference, it's also about this just we want this to succeed in our back of our mind mentality, and we're going to protect this thing. And versus, hey, when like a game like Starfield comes out or like whatever, like It's like, let's write
I hate
articles
the
for
menu screen.
2 months about why it's not going to be a success, even though there's like massive amounts of players playing it and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all about money, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it's why you see what is it, what you see on YouTube with like all the clickbait people out there, the people that get the most attention, the people that grow their channels, like the grifters and stuff, the most because they have extreme opinions and will defend it and just cause a lot of controversy. If you're familiar with sports broadcasting and news, the Skip Baylesses of YouTube is what I'll call them, right? Like Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, you know, like the personalities that just always go to an extreme one way or another so much that it draws so much conversation attention. Like people have learned from this, and politics has those personalities now. News sites across the United States, at least for sure, have those different personalities. You have gaming now within the YouTube space, and everything has those personalities. But what you see now is it's also it's like everybody that's like a game reviewer or a games media person wants to be one of those people, right? And it's like it's about them and their own actual like identity and trying to grow themselves as a brand almost, as opposed to doing the job, right? And we see a lot of games media actually talk crap about YouTubers and stuff all the time because they like see they're just voices that scream into a mic and have bad opinions and don't know anything about gaming, right? And but then you see like, okay, well, that's all that games media has turned into as well, except their screaming is with the keyboard, right?
Yeah,
and that's just really ultimately what it's become now, man. And like it's a shame to have seen that kind of permeate throughout the games journalism space. But you know, when money drives everything, that's ultimately what you get, right? So
facts
is what it is.
Facts. And if you're a review site, I remember at a time when I thought like a lot of reviews had, well, back in the day where they did like X-Play and the old Game Informer magazines and things like that, where they had a basis of like, this is how good the sound is, this is how good the graphics is, this is how good it is. And we were talking about it on FSP yesterday. You guys should check out that episode where they reviewed Call of Duty super low. It was 4 out of 10 on IGN. And like, to me, 4 out of 10 is just the audio alone. Maybe the audio is even higher than that. So if I were to just do the audio, that's 4. If I were to do graphics, that's 5 and 6. And I feel like personalities in media, and Mav kind of brought it up right there, like you have the Dreamcast guys and you have all these people, and a lot of the reviews nowadays is more so about the expectation of the game rather than what is actually in front of them. Starfield is a great example of this, where a lot of their reviews, they're basically punishing it for being what it is. They're punishing it for being a Bethesda game. They're like, oh, I expected it to be like No Man's Sky. I wanted to fly like this. I wanted this and this. Not for what the game actually has in it, which is insane. The amount of things you can do in Starfield. It's like it gets into this weird thing where I see reviews for Starfield like 4 out of 10 or something like that for a game like Starfield. And then it gets into this thing where I'm just like, genuinely, how could you rate a game like Starfield that low, knowing the quality of what's in it? Like if I were to try to make Starfield right now, there's no way. It would take me 10, 20 years to make a game like that. It will take any developer 10 something years to make a game like Starfield. The amount of stuff you can do in that game, the quality of the graphics, the soundtrack, the amount of missions in it, the versatility of the environments, all that different stuff alone boosts the score for me. And I there's a lot of sites I just can't take seriously. When you rate a game like Call of Duty a 4 out of 10, I might not like Call of Duty. It might not be my preferred game or something at the time. Like maybe I'm like, I'm not really feeling Call of Duty, but I can never deny the quality that is in a Call of Duty game. And that's where a lot of conversations start to get very disingenuous. Is when you start bringing your feeling into the game, like oh, I didn't like the fact that, I don't know, in Hogwarts it's associated with J.K. Rowling, so I'm not going to bring it up at the Game Awards. I'm going to refuse to award it despite it being the best selling game of the year. Just like things like that, where it's less about the game's quality and more about how you feel about the things around it, or what your personal expectations are. And that's where I feel like a lot of reviews are just getting lost, and not actually knowing how to review a game anymore. And that's where I listen to our shows, or I listen to the people in our community about how do they feel about the game. How are you vibing with it? Are you liking the gameplay, graphics? Because at this point, there's not a lot of review sites left that I trust, to even not just put in there like, well, oh, I don't like action games. Then why are you reviewing an action game? It's so many of that nowadays with reviewers. Like they don't like the game that they're reviewing. And it's like, okay. It's insane. So I brought up earlier for our third topic. It's kind of like more on a lighter note because we had two kind of heavy conversations, negative kind of things happening. I did kind of want to see what Mav thought about that first topic. So before we get into the positive, let's see what Mav thinks about game performance. So Mav, we in the first topic we kind of just talked about, and I'm just curious of what your thoughts are. Kind of talked about the common thread of seeing like Black Myth Wukong not performing well, and people saying it's the Series S's fault, even a game that's not on the Xbox. I thought that was crazy. I looked up because I'm
somebody actually curious. Say that?
A lot of people are saying it, that because there's articles about the performance of Black Myth Wukong, and then people are relating like well, it's not going to come to the Xbox because of the Series S. The Series S is a potato, so that is why, and things like that. They're actually blaming the Series S, a game that's not even on the Xbox yet. They're blaming the Series S. So I just want to talk to you about game performance, because we kind of talk about Jedi Survivor and things like that. But yeah, like with game performance, when you have games like Avowed coming out at 30 frames per second, I kind of criticize Xbox for that. I feel like that is something they can continue to do better on. Having a standard, they've pushed in the beginning of the generation like 60 frames going forward is our standard, but they're like, but we're allowing studios to do whatever they want. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of opposite messaging, but okay. What do you kind of think about I guess performance in modern day games or on consoles and in relation to PCs and things like that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like some devs it seems like optimization is like some reason like I always put last, with the game development. I don't understand 100% the process of game development, but I know that there's some developers that have talked about making it a priority, like optimizing throughout the process to make sure they have a smooth, great experience. And then they also talk about that 60 frames was important for them, right? And then you have some devs that are like, our focus is on this and that, and then we're gonna like prioritize optimizing for like frame rates and stuff like later, And I think it comes down to kind of the mentality and the preference of developers. And one thing is like, I think they see that the sales don't really matter for the frame rates and stuff for like console gamers. I think most console gamers just are oblivious to that. They don't even ask the questions, or they don't even really know. They just know, hey, this is a new game. That looks awesome. I see the commercials for it. I see the articles for it. I see all these other things, right? And what I see, like when these games actually release, a lot of times when they launch at like 30 frames or something, it actually can be a detriment to sometimes the reviews of the game, or the actual how people talk about it, and whether they realize that that's what it is or not, that they're not enjoying about it. When a game has like a smooth 60 experience, or a smooth like 1440 60, or options, and it's well optimized and the performance is good, generally those games are going to be talked about in a better light, and are going to be celebrated more. They're going to be pushed more. But like for some reason, it doesn't seem to always happen that way, you know. And you talk about devs saying their creative vision is this, you know, and so that's what they're going to focus on. But yet, you know, on PC at launch, you can do whatever you want, obviously. And then later they come out with the options and the modes and stuff like that on console later. And it happens time and time and time again. So meaning that it's possible to have these better experiences, in my opinion, right? It's just that they don't focus on it for launch. A lot of them don't. And for me, that's a mistake. I think that Black Myth Wukong probably I should have been like just delayed in general and optimized more. However, maybe they couldn't afford to, right? So maybe they launched where they thought they could. I don't know the situation that happened with it, but it is another game that's pushing the boundaries in so many areas, but it's also performing not so great with performance, and it has a lot of bugs and stuff like that too that's causing crashing, and that supposedly has that memory leak issue, if that's real, whatever, and stuff like that. So if these are things that are happening, it'd be nice to see these things get fixed before they're released. I don't think the Series S obviously has anything to do with it. I mean, shoot, we see Starfield running 60 frames on the Series S now.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and we with the amount of stuff, like people always talk about, well, the CPU is a bottleneck, right? This generation. It's always a different excuse. Well, the CPU is going to be the problem, or like, oh, it's going to be the RAM is going to be the problem, or this is going to be the problem, or oh, it's really annoying to optimize for the Series S, right? Well, like, hey, you could just still do it, you know, because you optimize for other platforms, you optimize for worse PCs, you know, and they a lot of times, like, we have the option to play a game at 1080 60 when you don't have that option on console, even on a PC that's inferior to like a Series S. You know what I mean? So like, I think prioritizing performance is something that for some reason just doesn't get as much focus with the development priorities as it should, right? And the reason I'm saying that is not just because of the experience I'm having. It's the interviews that you see with these developers. They don't like optimizing. They find it annoying optimizing, and also they say that they worry about that last. So if you're worried about it, like at some point you're done with the main development process, right? And it's like, okay, now we're on to bug fixes and optimization and all that. Okay, well, how much time are you leaving yourself for this? My argument would be they're not leaving themselves enough time for that if they're leaving it for last. Instead, they're focusing on pushing the bells and whistles on fidelity and all these other things to get it as shiny and have as many, like, hey, look at the ray tracing, look at the global illumination on this, look at all of this. And it's like, from my experience, some of that actually ruins the game experience because of the hit it takes to performance, right? Yeah. So, I don't know. I've been fine with fidelity, quality in games since, like, Xbox One, PS4 generation. Like, we have amazing looking games that come out that generation. My dream was for those games that look like that look as good as those games do, to come out still looking as good and at high quality as those games do, but like perform even better, or come out at higher resolutions with high frame rates and stuff. Not like, hey, look at this extra puddle reflection we can get here that's going to make your frame rate dip 45 frames. You know, hey, like that's going to be amazing. It's going to change everything. The fact that when you walk by that puddle, ooh, it adds a little bit of realism, you know, but instead you're going to be walking by it looking like this, you know, it's cool, right? Yeah, that puddle is freaking amazing. Oh, yeah, we can make it past this puddle. Okay, we're back at 60 now. Okay, we're going. Oh, another puddle. Oh my God, what's happening?
It's like a slideshow.
Yeah, like, and the first experience with that was actually Watch Dogs Legion, because that was like promoted big time with like ray tracing, right? That was like the showpiece for ray tracing. But guess what? It launched at only 30 frames and had a crap ton of bugs.
Mm-hmm.
Man, could you imagine if that game had launched with like options and been smooth and not had all those bugs, and they actually prioritized actually just releasing a polished, well optimized games instead of promoting ray tracing? Anyway, but that's also why I'm always on board with more serious hardware, because it makes the optimization easier.
I feel like I actually disagree. I think the more you give people, you're still going to have the problem of 30 FPS.
Because the devs are going to be like, oh, look at we can add even another puddle.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, we got twice the amount of puddles.
Because developers are I'm telling you guys, developers are focused on the wrong things. Like the targeting thing that developers are doing is they are focusing too much on how do I make this game look great and et cetera, et cetera. And then they, like you said, Mav, they focus on optimization last. Where you had a game like before, I use Halo 4 as an example. Halo 4 runs on an Xbox 360. So it's all about how you target your game and utilizing the hardware. But basically developers, what they get nowadays is like, oh, I got all this extra room, let's use it up immediately. And I generally feel like that's a problem, because then they just start to use like, oh, we could just use the 4K textures, and then we'll just downscale it or upscale it or use that, and then we'll just use the technology to optimize the game for us. And that
it seems so backwards, man.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, oh look at this, we can do this. Look, we got Unreal Engine 5 now. Look at all this cool stuff we could do. Like they spend like, we're gonna spend 6 years, we're gonna build this massive game in this massive world. Oh, it's gonna be incredible. Look at all this stuff we could do. We're gonna market it with all these crazy bells and whistles, and we're gonna make so much money. Oh my God. Oh, hey, we're finished with the primary development. Hey, let's check on the performance. It's running at 3 frames on everything. Oh, that's a problem. You mean that we can't actually put this game anywhere? Oh, I guess we got to start optimizing it now. Well, let's see if we can figure this out. Oh, shoot. And we got the Series S too. Oh my God. What are we going to do? You know, well, this is a problem, everybody. We're going to have to take another couple of years here. Like, maybe we can get it out at least on the PC and maybe the PS5 if we're lucky. But I don't know.
If you're putting your game on a Switch, I don't want to hear about if you're putting your game on the Switch and also like the Series S. I do not want to hear about like Series S being a problem.
They had Black Myth Wukong running on an Android phone.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean it ran like pretty crappy, but like it's possible to get it up and running on it. So it's like, yeah, the Series S is not good.
Yeah, you got games running on like a lot of different handheld devices now. Like you can play a majority of them. So if you're able to play it on the screen like that, it's just, if you are building your game for the PC in general, I really don't want to hear that you can't do it on the Series S, because majority of the time you are building for such a huge range of video cards, and the minimum card that is the most popular right now is lower than the Series S. So it really just gets into this thing where I'm just like, developers just don't want to work on the Xbox. That's what it comes down to. They port it to the Xbox, and then they find like, oh, I ported it to the Xbox and it works. It immediately works on the Series X, but dang, I gotta do a little bit more on the Series S. That's all it is. Like they just get annoyed that they have to do work on the Series S in general, because PlayStation It's just like, oh, they already are making the games mainly on a PlayStation. So it's like, that's already done. Cool. Made it on the PlayStation. But then like people, they have Xboxes, shoot. All right. Let me put it on the Xbox, I guess. Like, oh, it's done, but like, oh, Series S, oh man. I gotta do the thing on the Series S. Oh, this is impossible. This is why we keep getting things like the Gotham Knights. We always bring up this as an example because I think it's so funny to me that the Gotham Knights developer, who knows if he was actually a developer, I guess he was, saying like how it's not possible to put this game above.
that was a Rocksteady developer that's actually trying to defend WB Montreal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that guy. Okay, so specifically 3, but yeah, that was when everybody was talking about that. I remember everybody's like, "Oh, the CPU is the thing because it's co-op and all this stuff, and it's a shared world. And how are you going to do this with a game that looks like that? You know, an Unreal Engine, like
it's not
it
possible.
was impossible." And that Rocksteady developer was like, "You guys don't understand how difficult what you're asking for to get games at 60 frames. It's like there's this many nanoseconds of animation per frame and this amount of performance, and what you're asking is just absolutely freaking ridiculous." Meanwhile, the game that Rocksteady actually ended up making, Suicide Squad, has more graphics, more fast-paced action, co-op, open world, in the same engine, and it's hitting 60 frames on everything.
Exactly. That was literally what I was gonna say.
Right? So how do we take that guy's word for it when their game is actually achieves everything he said is absolutely impossible?
Yeah, it's impossible, right? So that's where I feel like a lot of the conversations just get disingenuous, where they call Series S a potato and it's holding back games, when you really, what it's about is the developers just don't want to do it. That's the truth, because you can't realistically say, oh, it's I can't do 30 FPS. It's an open world game and there's a lot of effects on the screen. And then immediately, like a year or two later, release Suicide Squad, which is way better looking. It's your same company. They're doing 60 frames, open world, everything you basically complained about in Gotham Knights. You're immediately doing 60 frames later on the Series S, by the way.
Yeah, and people would be okay with 30 on the Series S. Like you're buying a less expensive console for like a reason. You know what I mean? Like on the top end, high end games, like it's just weird that it's always used as an excuse. That same developer is one that had called the Series S a potato. Also, he's just one of those persons that tries to seek attention in those kind of dramatic ways and stuff. You know.
Yeah, I can never take those conversations seriously. Now, there's the problem I mentioned earlier, where Xbox needs to basically like, hey, like, you get it stepping, like, make sure that you start making the studios prioritize 60 frames, like your own studios. But it's not that it's not possible. It just comes down to priority in development, targeting the wrong things, in my opinion. And who said it in the chat? I seen someone mentioning it in the chat. We'll get to the chat and then we'll get on out of here. And they have a question for us, but let me try and find 3 bits, right? However, scope is set up from the get-go. Obviously 60 frames was not part of the original scope of most games, as Brett. Poison Maniac says fidelity, performance, average dev mentality. Yeah, he's basically saying fidelity is better than performance. That's the mentality for a lot of developers. Yeah, I will never get that. Like, to me, it's all about performance, and how you can also know, like, the targeting is definitely a thing. Like, look at Hi-Fi Rush, how smooth it is. That's because the game, it was important to have 60 frames per second. That game is buttery smooth, 60 frames, and that's because they wanted you to really feel it for the music and stuff like that. So it's like to the music. It's that was what they were targeting early on. So I feel like a lot of developers just, I don't know, it's such a weird thing to say, and with the Val director, like, oh, a first-person shooter, a first-person game, 60 frames doesn't matter, or whatever he said. I'm like, are you serious? That's the one time it does matter. Like if you were to pick any genre of games, you choose like top down, third person, first person is when it does matter, in my opinion. The way you're moving around and how close the camera is, and et cetera, et cetera. But I guess we're gonna keep running into this problem because apparently they are not seeing what we're seeing. I guess like you ask the developers, they just
supposedly like it's running right now smooth 30 and then and above, but like I think we'll see. Like there's still 6 months before launch, and they got more time. What I'm hoping is they get the option to put a second mode in there by launch.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe it just they haven't gotten to that point yet. Yeah. So I'm holding out hope for Avowed. What's crazy though is there's more discussion a lot of times even about Avowed because of this interview, right? Than like the actual games that are out there that are failing to hit the 60 that are launching like today.
Yeah.
You know, and like other days, which is like Black Myth Wukong and PS5 and stuff. Like, and like there's none of the media is talking about that whatsoever. No. You know, and that's like they're one of by default because the Xbox version is delayed. That's like one of the biggest wins PlayStation has this year is that game's on there, right? But
yeah. And they're not going to talk about it.
Supposedly crap. So
yeah, it's crazy. Calorie says one of my serious questions I have, and I'll get to yours, Brett, too. One of my serious questions I have is why does bug testing happen before performance testing? Like QA should be done after performance so they can catch sections that have frame drops. I mean, every studio's different. But yeah, you're right. I don't know. I don't like internally at UB they would have a lot of testing, a lot of performance testing for some of their games. Like I was working on Rainbow Six, and they had a ton of performance testing before that game came out. But not
Ubisoft games usually run pretty smooth.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
but they have bugs. But they didn't have good performance. But like except for Watch Dogs Legion didn't, which is one that we talked about earlier. But to be devil's advocate for performance in this situation, when we talk about frame drops, right? I think at times in the hardcore gamers, we get too caught up with the one tiny section of a game that ends up dropping like 5 frames. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like we will all be out playing this game, celebrating how amazing and incredible it is for like 2 weeks. Oh, this game's great. We love it. Oh my God, this is so great. And this is like, hey, not having any issues, blah, blah, blah. You know, hey, it looks good, plays good, feels good.
Their next
game's
post.
Good,
look at this section.
And then Digital Foundry does their like, let's really analyze this game, you know? And like, hey, here's the Xbox Series X version, here's the PS5 version, here's the PC version. Oh my God, did you see in this one section, in this one level, that was crazy with all these characters and all these puddles with ray tracing and all this other crap that they put in there? Oh my God, guys. There was a 8 frames drop there. It dropped to 52 frames per second for like 2 seconds. And then that clip of Digital Foundry gets posted like on social media, and let's say it's the Xbox version that has that, right? Why can't Xbox have good performance in their games? Why is this always a problem for Xbox having such bad performance? Why is the frame rate always such an issue with Xbox? Or like, let's say it's PlayStation or whatever. It's just always a thing. And it's like, none of us, all of us have been playing this game, have played that same section of the same game and not even noticed it or even cared. But because it was found under a microscope, it's a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
Something that doesn't actually affect us whatsoever, right? No, something nobody ever notices. So like the frame drop thing, if it's bad and it's consistent and happening all the time, yeah, for sure. But I don't get upset if there's a frame drop here and there in a huge game where they're pushing fidelity and graphics and ambitious and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that's part where we get a little bit over
Yeah, this like
critical.
Digital Foundry's thing is mostly used for console wars, or
Yeah, you know,
sometimes
they
they
have
even do
the
it
video at the
because
bar.
if Xbox does way better than a PlayStation version, you won't see a video. They'll just refuse
Yeah.
to do the video. So it's like okay. So when it does matter, when there is a huge, it's mostly used for
What we're gonna
fan
see
console
is
wars.
like the games that are like Indiana Jones and stuff like that. We're
Yeah.
gonna see you'll have the performance video when the Xbox and PC versions out, but then later they'll do like a comparison. But then you're also gonna see the PS5 Pro, if the PS5 Pro's out.
Yep.
And
The
that's gonna be
shadows are
really
better.
interesting, like them talking about how much better the PlayStation versions are of these games, you know.
Yeah,
Wait for it, it's gonna happen.
that's
Yeah.
that game is gonna be such I just want to not look up any video of that game once it's out because it's just gonna be console worry as heck.
Mhm.
That's gonna be an interesting one. Brett says 3-bit, how about everyone thinking, and we'll get to the last topic and then get on out of here. How about everyone thinking the PS5 Pro is going to be $599 when they just raised the price of the PS5 in Japan? I meant to get to this earlier, Brett. Furthermore, supposedly the Pro has an extra terabyte plus 10% more power. What are your thoughts? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
You go, Fizz?
Yeah, I was wondering this earlier, although some people say that this still shows that they're going to do a PS5 Pro. Like I'm thinking if you're raising the price of the PS5, why would you come out with a PS5 Pro? It just feels weird to me. But let's say they do come out with that PS5 Pro because they raised it to like 600 in Japan, then that means the Pro would probably be 700. There's no need in raising the price on an item to release the newer, better item for less or the same. So that doesn't make sense. So I'm thinking if I still don't think that there's a PS5 Pro anymore. I know that there were dev kits out there. I know that there were, some people showed or seen them at other studios and things, but I think that's now being pushed to a PS6. I think that's what it will wind up being. But if they do release a PS5 Pro, expect to pay 600 plus, or at this point in Japan, it's at least starting at 700 for a PS5 Pro, which seems bonkers to me. And there were a couple other people making mention about this whole deal where are we even sure that the PS5 was making profit?
Yeah, I seen that.
From each
Yeah.
one sold. Which kind of drives it into question. It's like, well, if they were making profit, then these price increases seem out of sorts from what I know about building stuff in China. You don't go up $100 if your costs for building materials went up 5% or even 20%. That's not $100 on that thing. So I can't imagine that these price increases are based around whatever material costs. It's like, hey, well, Xbox doesn't seem to be, that interested in Japan anymore. So why don't we just hit people over the head? Oh yeah, by the way, we got this, Wukong game that people are buying the console over. We didn't even have to release it ourselves. It's kind of an exclusive. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's make as much money as possible before the scalpers do. Thing, but I don't know. It's just weird to me. But yeah, I don't think a pro is coming, but if it does, pony up some at least 100 extra. That's got to be at least a minimum over the regular five anyway.
Yes, it's just such a weird thing to me. To to increase the price for your console 3 years into the generation. I mean, Xbox did it too, like you said, in like Japan, because they're like, well, we're not making money in here, so might as well whichever sucker buys this thing, make as much money off of them. But 3 years into the console generation, I don't think we've seen this in other generations. Usually the consoles get cheaper, but we're seeing where it gets more expensive for both Xbox and PlayStation. So that's interesting. And then it's a lot of people don't even like, they have a PS4, PS4 Pro, and a lot of people didn't buy the PS5. Like a lot of people are still on the PS4, I guess, waiting And maybe that's what they're hoping for. Like they don't want people to be left behind, the FOMO. So maybe PS5 Pro comes out and then they're like, oh, let me get the PS5 and it's more expensive. Maybe that's their strategy. If that is the case, I don't know if PS5 Pro exists. Big Mad Mo says PS5 Pro doesn't exist. If it does exist, I'm just like, okay, it's 10% more powerful, and you barely utilize the power that's already on the PS5. Okay, and then I don't know. It just gets into a weird conversation of like you barely utilize what's already there in the PS5, and we're already getting PS5 Pro. It's just I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. What do you think, Mav, about the PS5 Pro and the price points and whatnot?
I think there's enough smoke out there from some of the more credible people to think that it's real. I don't know how they're going to market it is the most interesting thing. Like, they got to have some compelling things to show.
The games,
like, like they got to have like benefits from third party games. Like, let's be real. That's all people have really been caring about and playing. Anyway, maybe they'll say, hey, guess what? Black Myth Wukong, 60 frames per second smooth now. PS5 Pro, right? Then the Wukong reviews will come out. Like maybe I think they're gonna have like some third party companies and stuff showcase like this is why it's better. Like some deals they make with some of these companies. Like, look what this game can do on this, and you're gonna have better performance. Probably going to be $200 more at least than the digital PS5 now, right? Because it's a digital only supposed version with an ability to add on a disc tray. So I think $449 in the US is what we're looking at right now for a PS5 all digital. I don't see the price dropping, especially with recent increases in other places of the world. So even if they're able to maintain that price at $449 for the PS5 digital, we're looking at least, I think, probably $650 for a Pro. And you're probably going to see some marginal gains there. Honestly, I think they're going to try and promote it, and maybe it's more than I'm thinking, right? But I think you're going to see some. Well, okay, here's updates to some of our existing games, ones that are still played quite a bit. Like maybe GT7 gets an update. Right, that's the one I'm hoping for. Get some kind of bells and whistles update there. Maybe they give an update to God of War Ragnarok or Forbidden West. Maybe they charge $10 for the update. I don't know. They've tend to do crazy stuff like that before. But then we'll have, let's say, biggest third party games lined up. Maybe crazy if they actually get Rockstar to kind of do a promotion with them. And 2K Games for GTA. But I don't think they will, because I don't think that will even be able to hit 60 on the PS5 Pro. Yeah. If it does, that's going to be a huge advantage for PlayStation 5 Pro. I think it'll probably
sell. A good marketing thing.
Them. But I don't know if it's possible because of the leaked and rumored specs of this thing. Mainly have been a focus on slight better graphics card, but like only a little bit improvement on the CPU and stuff, which again, all these developers have said has been the biggest bottleneck this generation. And with the PS5, the CPU speed has been more variable, I think, and they're going to be able to have like this same CPU, but like locked at the higher, but have like a 10% boost mode. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they do to take advantage of that kind of stuff, but I kind of struggle to see what they're going to use to promote it. Now, let's say they have a PS5. What's being rumored right now is late September. They're going to have a Hopes and Dreams showcase where they also announce the PS5 Pro, right? And if they do that and they try and recreate the moments they had like from 2016 with the Hopes and Dreams showcase PlayStation had then, and they actually announce a lot of big time first party games coming out in the next 2 years after, right? Then I think that'll be a big win for them if that happens. But right now, it's up in the air. If that happens, I think we'll see Ghost of Tsushima 2. They'll probably show off the graphics of Death Stranding 2 because it's a visual game anyway, right? It would have been even if it just launched on regular PS5. Then they'll probably have like maybe they'll announce Cory Barlog's game there and showcase that and say it's coming in 2026 or something like that or whatever. And then they'll try and promote that, hey, PlayStation's going to be the best place to play these games for the next couple years. And I think they launch next gen is going to be probably a year after Xboxes.
Yeah.
So they're for them, they're probably going to get an extra year out of this box, whatever this is. So maybe if Xbox 2026, PS5 Pro will last for like 3 years for like the high end spec, which is actually longer than PS4 Pro.
Sure.
So as long as they have games that has some merit, they got to have I want to see the advantage. I want to see what it can do before I can make a real judgment on it. You know?
Yeah.
I went ahead and sold my PS5 now just because it was collecting dust, and hopefully the PS5 Pro comes out at a good price point and has some compelling games coming and some good updates for existing games. Then I'll give me a reason enough maybe to dive back in. But for right now, there's no reason to even own a PlayStation.
Yeah. I'm not playing a lot on my PlayStation right now. I don't think I've turned it on since I played Spider-Man 2, and yeah, that game was again very buggiest game I played.
Well, it's funny. It was so funny when I sold my PlayStation. The only reason it was like we considered keeping it was because like my daughter plays Fortnite so much, right? And sometimes like on the different platforms, they'll have like exclusive skins. Oh, yeah. And she'll want like to have all the skins, you know, that she likes. And if there's like one that launches on a PlayStation or one that launches like on a Switch or on mobile or whatever, she like wants to have those skins for Fortnite and stuff like that. So like when we sold the PlayStation, she was like, "Oh, like so I won't be able to get those skins." Anyway,
yeah. And PS5, what the Xbox is gonna do, what the PS5 is gonna do. Right now, it's the race to GTA 6. It's the game that will move consoles. And games are already moving around that date. We had the Xbox leads talk about that a little bit. We'll do a little something, and we'll head on out. Peeps want us to talk about Dreamcast Guy. So, I've seen it earlier. If you guys don't know, VGC just had a thing where they were like, let's have a review roundtable about Star Wars Outlaw, and then it talked about all the different people in there, and then Dreamcast Guy is in there, and all you gotta do is look at the comments, the comment section about that. I don't realistically think that they didn't vet this person. I know they had a response in their comment section like oh, we didn't know, or whatever they said, like we'll do better, and I'm just like, there's no way you didn't know. Like, you've had to contact this guy, you've probably had to look at somewhat of his content. Like, if you're doing a review roundtable, and this is your article site, I'm sure you will know the person that is in your review roundtable. I mean, am I crazy to think that? Maybe, I guess. But there's certain people in this community, I feel like, who are the worst. And like, I don't say this about a lot of people, but he's one of the people that I feel like generally messes up the community with his clickbait. And yeah, he's just the worst. I could go on and on about this dude, but peeps in the chat want us to talk about. So last thing, I'll bring it to you, Mav, as our guest, and then we'll bring it to Fuzzy, and then we'll get on out of here. What do you think?
Oh, this kind of goes to what we talked about earlier with kind of where games media has gone and what they are now. And, you know, like, I think they didn't realize people would care as much as they did when they brought the obvious one on, you know, like I am actually one of the few probably in this community that has not even like watched a full video or a full show or anything with that guy on it,
Good.
right? All I see is people talk about him all the time, so I know the reputation. I see the little clips all the time people share and just how ridiculous, and I see like the posts of people quote tweeting and like about the stuff that he says and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm familiar with kind of the creator that he is, and my personal take in the gaming space and just in content creation in general and just life, one of the worst kind of people there is. So I don't like really like to see those people get propped up or elevated when basically it's a fake persona about taking advantage of people's mentality and feeding a bunch of misinformation to people that would, I honestly like are, I hate to say it, but like a lot of gaming community people and just in general, just in news and media and everything in general, is just going to listen to whatever somebody says and believe it, right? And some of these personalities just know how to take advantage of that and grow this community of like people that just like, yeah, we're all with you, man. Like we love everything that you say. We're like, yeah, this is stupid as shit, but I'm down for it. It's like they raise this kind of like group of followers and stuff of due to their controversy,
Yeah.
and it's for their own personal gain to the detriment of every single person that follows them and is misled, every single person that watches any of the content, any person that spends any money supporting, any person that contributes in any kind of way to the success of a person like that. I actually feel like they're a victim, and people like that are kind of propped up, and personal responsibility, we'll have to kind of be aware ourselves, but people aren't going to be like that. So I'm glad enough people notice and be like, hey, this guy he's fake. Even saw like Paris put out there and stuff like that. Like, this guy's fake. Why are you having him? So I'm glad enough people that are familiar with him put it to the attention for them to actually call us out. But it's BS. They knew this ahead of time. They were trying to draw a crowd. They were trying to get clicks. They're trying to get attention, trying to get views.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, now our reputation's at stake. Oh, what do we do about this? Oh, I guess we shouldn't have had somebody that has a horrible reputation represent our brand. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like, I guess personally, I can never be a part of that sort of crowd where you basically just make fake, like you don't genuinely believe in the things you're saying. You're just like, oh, I know this is going to get clicks. I know that this opinion is probably very different from others, or you kind of just go with the vibe of the media, which is PlayStation. So you basically like, let's go on the hate Xbox train, even if it's not true, whatever is the popular thing at the moment, changing your opinion or your, I don't know. He's just very disingenuous. It annoys the heck out of me because I already feel like journalists or journalism in general in gaming has died for a lot of the reasons I was stating earlier, whether it's putting your personal personality in front of a review rather than review a game for what it is. That's already flooding game journalism, and it's you get that, and then on top of that you get people like Dreamcast Guy or Reforge, who are just the worst. I will add Reforge to that as well, who, by the way, I do want to call Reforge out a little bit, just because he mentioned me in one of his live streams. He said, I talked to a Fable developer, and what did he say? He was basically saying, oh yeah, I talked with a Fable developer confirming that it is has bad performance or whatever. For once, I never said anything like that. I would never say anything like that. And the fact that he was like, "Oh yeah, I talked to him behind the scenes." And I'm like, "No, you didn't." I I DM'd him because he mentioned me, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And that was the DM. That was the extent of the DM. So crazy. Anyways, just disingenuous people in this community. I just can't stand them. Fuzzy, get us on out of here. What are your last thoughts on peeps like Dreamcast, and then close us out, man.
Early on, me watching YouTube and watching gaming content, I thought he was a true Sega fan, being the name was Dreamcast. I mean, I didn't stick around for the Dreamcast. I had kind of already been burned after the 32X and whatnot, and the Sega Saturn shortly after. But I think I watched one of his videos that was not supposed to be about an Xbox game, and the fact that he brought up Xbox, I'm like, okay, why? Oh, so it's you're one of those guys that when you want to say something's bad, but you want to give an example as worse, and you bring it, yeah, no thanks. So to see that VGC had him on some sort of roundtable was like they knew. I agree with you guys. They knew, but maybe there was a naive intern that reached out to him. They saw that their name was trending at some point, didn't
Oh, the amount
research
of
why it was
followers,
trending.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, looked at the number of followers, views on the channel, didn't watch the content. It was like, hey, come on down. And there have been other news, actually like real news outlets that have done ridiculous things like that too. So I
True.
can't fully blame VGC, but it's like, yeah, they should have known better. They should do better. And when we talked about gaming journalists earlier today, it was like this is part of the stuff where they're in they're supposed to be in the know. They're supposed to be behind the scenes. How do you not know this guy was a bag of baguettes or whatever you want to call it type of thing? So I don't know. I think maybe this will be a lesson learned, and it's no. I have no ill will feelings towards the dude. It's just if you're going to be that type of person that you can have this fake smile and say this ridiculousness knowing that it's ridiculousness, and then willingly tell people behind the scenes that some people that we all know behind the scenes that yeah, this is just my shtick kind of thing. I don't know. I could see if you were a true comedian and you're doing stand up kind of thing, and it's all for jokes, but like when you make it seem serious or have it where it comes across serious or quote unquote credible, I think it's time for a change, whether it's people not listening to the nonsense he spews, or maybe VGC should be looked at differently. It's like gaming if they didn't know that that guy was who he was kind of thing. Like it doesn't take the kids from Scooby Doo to I don't know. It's an example of gaming media not truly being in touch with gaming in general. So that's all I got.
For sure. Yeah, I completely agree with both of you guys' takes on that. I typically don't even like to bring the people up because it just annoys me that they. I mean, they're in a way me bringing him up just now proves that he did something right. Right, because he's staying relevant. That's why I try not to even bring them up, but you guys wanted us to, so I will talk about it. And it is relevant because I feel like there's a lot of content creators in our space who generally just don't love gaming. You have people in our community who like always talks about like how Xbox is trash or this, or I hate this and hate this, and you look at their games and then like they haven't played a game in like months, right? So the things that they're talking about are they don't genuinely believe it. They just follow what can I get clicks on. I mean, I guarantee you the stuff that Dreamcast says about games, I bet you he barely plays them half the
No, he
time.
does. I mean, he's admitted to certain people out there. He just does it for the money, right? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like there's a lot of those out there that won't actually admit it to anybody, but they are the same kind of person.
Yeah.
Right. But for me, they're kind of easy to spot. And sometimes we learn who those people are over time. There's sometimes new people that come in the community that you think they're all legitimate. And you kind of find out later they're not who you thought they were also. Right. So, like a lot of times people are willing to do whatever for growth because that's what ultimately is what's important to them is the channel, their brand, their identity, their growth at the expense of integrity, right? And at the expense of actual speaking your own personal opinion and having your own take and your own thoughts about things. Instead, it's just about what's going to drive the most traffic, it's going to drive the most attention. The same thing that we talked about with games media, right? That the same thing that they're doing. And it's all, for me, I hate that stuff because that ruins social conversation. It ruins narratives. It ruins what we should be talking about. And we shouldn't be talking about somebody like him, right? We should be talking about somebody like a Mr. Boomstick or like PTK Blam or Steel and there's so many awesome people community like the Iron Lords, Lord Cognito, like one of the most class act persons like you can see out there doing everything the right way, right? But like they're not gonna achieve what these people out there that are going the other way because they're taking the easy path. They're taking the easy path of no responsibility, no integrity, no class, and some of us for entertainment, there's a lot of fun things, like joking around and stuff like I appreciate that stuff. That stuff's fun. But when you're just knowingly lying constantly to your audience, like that's when you've reached this level of like you kind of scum, right? Now you have to kind of go and live with yourself with that about being this fake ass person for your own personal gain at the expense of other people, right? But those people are willing to do it.
Yeah.
And, a lot of us aren't. So,
yeah, it's sad.
It'd be easy for you to all of a sudden become a toxic content creator and get tons of conversation and
I would love to do a social experiment, me being toxic for like 2-3 months and then just seeing what happens, because I'm sure I can do it.
Yeah, dude, if I decided to go down that path and just like did Mavcast with rants about content creators every day, it would be like crazy
easy. Yeah,
dude, like it would just be like nuts. Like it was just like, hey, let's just like take like 2 hours of just crap talking this, crap talking that, crap talking this person, crap talking that. And you know what? Like some people may enjoy it because they enjoy those things. I only do that stuff when it actually feel like I have something to say.
Yeah.
And like some people, that's just, they have to create the thing to say because that is the product. That is what they are. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, there's space for those channels. I've seen those channels. I mean, those channels have talked about us. So, it's a thing. And I can never just get into those spaces because we've all been podcasting here, I think, for 3-4 years now. I feel like we've seen it all at this point. We continue to do it because we love this community. If there's like 2 people, 1 person in the chat, I'm just like, yay, that is 1 person. If we are in a room together and I'm just talking with you guys, you talking to me, like that's fun for me. Just everybody who shows up here on PXE and FSP, like you guys are the reason why we love what we do. It's just like you guys are awesome. I appreciate every single time you guys come on the shows. It's fun for me. It's fun for Mav. Fuzzy. That's why we podcast all the time. We've been doing it for like 3-4 years now. And we don't do those clickbaity titles and just constant hate on whatever. We just speak our mind, and it comes from a place of passion. We're nerds. I'm a nerd, at least. I love games. I love the development side. And I will continue to try and speak my mind as best I can and come from a place that is genuine. And that's when you guys come to these shows, that's what you can rely on. That we are just completely just speaking from what we think is correct, or what we think is right, what we like. All right, man. That is the end of the show. We're gonna get on out of here. I appreciate y'all. I clipped the part about Reforge. I'll put it up on Twitter when I find this video of him lying. Yeah, see if you can find it. It was a while ago. I remember seeing it. I was just like, what the heck?
Yeah, that was like 2 years ago almost.
Yeah,
A year
if
and
you
a
can
half
find
ago.
I forgot what the stream is, but it was probably Fable related. If you really want to dig deep, but it's basically him saying like, "Oh, I talked to the Fable developer, and I'm like, no, that is not what happened." But yeah, just look for that if you can. It was a while ago. But appreciate everybody for dropping on by. This was a fun stream. So we're taking a break after this because I am going to Patty. I'm going to Paris. So I'll be gone. But after that, we go back to our regular show on Sundays at 8:30. So I appreciate this is basically a special edition because we usually don't have shows on this day. But to my co-hosts and special guests, thank you guys for dropping on in. Mav, please tell people where they can find you, what you got going on.
Yeah, tonight actually I'm gonna stream some Star Wars Outlaws.
Ooh, I will drop by.
Yeah, shortly I'll be hopping on onto the channel and launching that stream. So maybe around like 11 Central, 12 Eastern time. Play that some tonight, and then we'll see. What's the say Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, my day is mixed up. It's like on Thursday. We'll have PM in the PM at 7 p.m. Eastern time with Pong, Soul, and I. Looking forward because there's a lot of games dropping that we're all excited about. Pong's been playing Age of Mythology. Yeah, like we're told. I'm super jealous, right? Maybe I'll be able to swing getting that in the next day or two. I don't know. I'm thinking I was contemplating just waiting until next week, but now I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to because Pong, I was just in the on Twitter with him, and he reminded me, yeah, Warhammer Space Marine comes out next week too, and then we got the Call of Duty beta coming, and we got like, what are we gonna do, man? It's like no stop to these games. I don't know how we're going to play everything. It's just too much. Can't keep up. So man, yeah, the next month is going to be so much fun with gaming. So yeah, but it starts tonight with Star Wars Outlaws. So and the Friday Xbox Ultimate podcast, and also I'll be I don't know if he mentioned it. I don't know if you want like anyway. I'll be on Fonz's channel tomorrow on Fonz Really Gaming for Game Talk Live.
Nice.
Looking forward to that because I haven't hung out with Fonz in a while. But yeah.
When is that?
Man, I think it's at like 9.
Okay.
He had moved it a couple times. Yeah, it's at 9 my time, 10 p.m. Eastern time.
Tomorrow? Is that what you said?
Okay. Tomorrow. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check that
looking
out.
forward to that, man, because Fonz is like a dude that's been cool with me in the background for a long time. Like back when RDX was going and everything, and they were all so huge and stuff. He helped me with like things with my setup, with the audio, and like he's just a generally good dude. We don't always agree on everything, you know. We like sometimes like have back and forth or whatever and stuff, but generally like it just always been super great guy. So looking forward to that show tomorrow, and yeah, man, Xbox is cooking. Got lots of stuff to play. Xbox Ultimate 10 p.m. Eastern time, man. Cool. Fun speculation. Come watch.
Let's go.
We're gonna have fun.
Yeah. Awesome,
no doom and gloom.
No doom and gloom. No doom and gloom. And Fuzzy, get us on out of here, man. What you got going on? And yeah, tell us what's up.
Well, this was awesome. Always awesome when we have Mav on as well, and just love doing this podcast with you three. But love the chat. Thank you guys for posing questions, interacting with us, and checking us out. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Don't forget, if you can, hit the like button or comment down below. Any thoughts, suggestions, or comments? Yeah, feel free to leave them in the comment section. Subscribe if you haven't already. And for those that want to hear my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, just follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Fuzzy_Belvedere. where you can find me on other podcasts like Breakfast with Boom, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday morning, on Double Barrel Gaming. And then on basically later that evening, I'm on a new podcast with my wife called Fright Night with Ferocious Fee at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just do a search for Ferocious Fee or Fright Night with Ferocious Fee on YouTube. You'll be able to find the podcast. And then later on that evening, as Mav mentioned, Xbox Ultimate, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Definitely come hang out with the family. It's going to be a good time. Get to kick back and talk about some of the games we played this week and all the other shenanigans on Twitter and in the gaming space in general. But man, Chop Podcast Saturday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, PTK Blam's channel, and then we're going to have a little break for PXE. But after 3-Bit gets back from vacay, have fun, safe time out there. We'll be right back for Sundays at our usual time. But man, this was an awesome night. Thanks again, guys.
Post lots of pictures. Send us lots of pictures. 3-Bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to see you like dangling from the Eiffel Tower.
Don't dangle. Just pose in front of
No,
it.
dangle. I want to see you dangling.
You have to dangle. Oh, it's gonna be awesome, man. I can't
one-handed. This is for you, man.
Oh my God. Immediately get arrested. Like, I did it for the gram. If you guys agreed with us or not, let us know in the comment section down below. You guys know where you can find the show. It's right here every Sunday. And yes, Poison is now a mod. I hope I don't regret this later, but it's too late now. It's signed in contract, so it's too late. I'll see you guys on the next episode of Pixelated Echoes. Again, we're having a week break, but there might be a video to hold you guys over, so just look out for that. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. If the outro is sketchy, that's because things happen right before this show. So if it's a little weird, yeah, that's why. Bye.